It is a little after 10 o'clock. I think that we have some of our, hopefully all of our technology issues taken care of at this point. I want to welcome everyone to the July 12th, 2022 regular meeting of the Georgia Government Transparency and Campaign Finance Commission. We have an agenda before us today, fellow commissioners. This is actually an amended agenda for today's meeting. It looks like we have 12 items that are listed on the agenda today. It is my understanding that we do have some minor revisions that need to be made to the agenda at this point, which I will go ahead and make, and the Executive Secretary Amadi can tell me if I've made any mistakes. But under the preliminary hearings, item F, which is in the matter of, is it Jeannie Seaver? Jeannie Seaver, that will be moved to the consent orders. That will be item BB under the consent orders. Item K under the preliminary hearings in the matter of Lester Jackson will also now be moved to the consent orders as CC. And it's my understanding that item G under the preliminary hearings, which is in the matter of Tony Brown, that will actually be continued for notice issues. Correct. Is that all correct?
Yes.
All right. Are there any other discussions or changes that need to be made to the agenda as it has been presented here today? All right. I'll go ahead and move to adopt the agenda as presented. Do I have a second?
Second.
I've got a motion and a second. Do I have any discussion? Hearing none, I'll call the question. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, the agenda is adopted. I will now move to item number 2 on the agenda, which is entitled Special Recognition. And in saying that, I'm glad to say that I'm looking out into the gallery today and I see a very familiar face. It's someone who I believe that someone must have twisted his arm pretty strong to force him to come back to the commission this morning when he wasn't under an obligation necessarily to do so. In a moment, I'm going to ask former Commissioner Eric Barnum to step forward. I'm going to just say a few things about him for a moment. I'll note that it's either good or bad for Commissioner Barnum, but I actually served with him the entire time that he was on the commission. So again, I don't know if that was good or bad for him, but I do know a few things about him, and I can say a few things about him in that regard. I can say that Commissioner Barnum was always very dedicated and dependable. I don't know of any occasion where the commission ever had a meeting and Mr. Barnum was not present for that meeting. He was very articulate and persuasive in his arguments and in his positions that he took on the case, and he wasn't going to be persuaded by that if he really believed that he held the correct position. And most of all, I think he was very personable with everyone, and he was very respectful of others that had different opinions than he did. So again, he was a pleasure to work with, and I give anyone else an opportunity to say anything about him if you would like. But again, I'm going to ask former Commissioner Eric Barnum to come forward and receive a token of our appreciation.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I'm going to ask all the commissioners to come down because I think we're going to get a photographic opportunity. Are we giving you cash? Yeah.
Where are we going to do this?
This right here.
Okay, all right.
Thank you. Yeah, good to see you. Come on, so code's definitely okay.
Yeah.
Hang on. Well, I'll get it.
All right, thank you. Mr. Chairman, thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioners, good to see all of you. Thank you very much.
You know, do speeches and outgoing.
How are you?
David Burr.
Hey, David.
I think I have your seat.
How are you? You sure do. Well, it's the people's seat.
That's right.
Well, thank
That's
you.
my view.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, if it's okay, I would like to make a couple of comments. To the record, if that's okay.
Sure.
All right. Mr. Chairman, thank you so much for the recognition and for your kind words. Thank you to Secretary Amati and to all of the commissioners, to all of the staff that I've had the pleasure to serve the people of Georgia alongside during my time on this commission. I simply want to enter into the record a few thoughts. The work of this committee, as all of the commissioners know, and all of the staff that supports this commission knows, but that other people may not know, is this work is critically important. It doesn't get a lot of attention, but the people in the state of Georgia have charged this commission with making sure that our campaign finance laws are fair, that are adjudicated equally and without prejudice, and that what we ultimately do is for the good of the people of the state of Georgia. It has been my honor to serve on this commission and serve alongside present and past commissioners, as well as all of the staff people. I'm particularly impressed with, and I've always been impressed with, our staff attorneys, including Mr. Cusack and others, who have always come prepared to adjudicate these matters. And so it has been an honor of my lifetime to serve on this commission, and I want to thank you all. I do want to draw out for special recognition one person. Ms. Easterwood, you have been an amazing colleague to work alongside. Your work goes quietly and often without recognition, but you are the glue that keeps this commission together, and you have always been a pleasure to work with. I'm especially grateful for the way you reached out when I lost my mom earlier this year, and how supportive you have been throughout her illness. You always sent me a special note. Thank you for that. You have been a pleasure to work with. So, commissioners, thank you all very much. Thank you for this honor, this recognition. Thank you to all the staff. Keep up the good fight. Continue the good work. And who knows, you may be seeing me dropping in on a meeting every now and then. Not representing any of the litigants. Thank you all very much.
Thank you. All right. We have a rather large calendar today, so we're going to move through this as quickly as we can, although we do need to make sure that we take care of all these items. We're going to start off with our preliminary hearing calendar. Oh, I'm sorry, no, we have to review our meeting minutes first. And the very strange thing, I guess, is we have two sets of meeting minutes that we need to review. And the first set of meeting minutes that we need to review is the meeting that took place on March the 21st of 2022. It's a meeting that I was actually unable to attend. It was attended by Commissioner Barnum, Commissioner Watts, and Commissioner Thompson. Because there are only two of those commissioners that are present today, they would constitute a quorum to be able to review and approve the minutes from that meeting. So I will sort of turn that over to Vice Chair Watts and just ask him if there are, if he and Commissioner Thompson have had any time to review those minutes, any changes or any discussion or anything in that regard as concerns those minutes.
Okay, so I'll make a motion to approve the minutes.
All right, is there a second?
Second.
All right, I've got a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, that would pass 2-0, approving those minutes. The next set of minutes that we have to consider are the meeting minutes from May the 12th of 2022. That was a meeting that was attended by all of the present commissioners. That was the special meeting that was held in the John Oxendine case. Has everyone had an opportunity to review the minutes of that special meeting? Does anyone have any questions, concerns, or comments with regard to those minutes? All right, I'll make a motion that we go ahead and approve those minutes as presented.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing no discussion, I'll call the question. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, the motion passes. We've got both sets of those minutes have been approved. Now, we will move on to the preliminary hearing calendar. The first matter that we have on the preliminary hearing calendar is case number 21-0011-C in the matter of Kasim Reed. Looks like Mr. Cusack has got that case. What do we have here?
And Mr. Chairman, I spoke to Mr. Highsmith, who's representing Mr. Reed last night. They are going to waive probable cause for this hearing and put this matter over an OSO. We already actually have a consent order reached in this case. It is just a matter of getting us an additional documentation that I need to check before we can enter into that consent order. So we're working to get that final documentation. There was about 3 documents I think Mr. Highsmith has gathered, and there's one more that he's going to get over to me, and then we can enter into that consent order hopefully at the next meeting.
So is there going, Mr. Cusack, is there going to be an order that is going to be signed, on behalf of the commission then, that's going to actually be a finding of probable cause?
I believe so, yes.
Okay.
I believe it's just having waived probable cause, the commission would ratify that.
Again, what I'm trying to find clear is that it's going to be a finding then.
Yes.
That we find probable cause that there's been a violation of the Campaign Finance Act under the alleged
Yes,
points that were raised in the complaint.
yes, the alleged, I guess what was alleged in the complaint, which I believe stems from 2 missed filings of campaign contribution disclosure reports.
Okay, and with that being the case, if you guys aren't able to work out that resolution in the next 30 days, then it's going to be docketed with the Office of State Administrative Hearings.
That is correct.
Okay. I guess, is that going to, Mr. Executive Secretary, is that going to require a motion then at this point?
It has to.
Okay, all right. I'll go ahead and make a motion then that we find probable cause in this case that there was a violation of the Campaign Finance Act as consented to by Mr. Reed. I got a motion and a second. Do we have any discussion? Hearing none, I'll call the
I
question.
have one question.
Oh, sure.
This only relates to the mayoral elections 5 years ago, not the one that was just last year.
That is correct.
So these are issues stemming from after he left office, but doesn't include last year's mayoral election in that at all.
That's correct. It is the previous, while he was still in office, mayoral account.
Okay.
And again, just so we're clear, the motion is going to encompass all allegations that were made in the complaint for the various points for violations of the Campaign Finance Act.
Yes.
All right. Again, I've got a motion and a second. Any further discussion or questions? Hearing none, I'll go ahead and call the question. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion carries. All right, we've got the next item on there is, I'll call case number 22-0035C in the matter of Catherine Davis. Who's going to be handling that one? Ms. Davis, you're present?
I am.
All right, would you step forward, please? Mr. Cusack, is that your case?
It is.
All right. Ms. Davis, Ms. Davis, you can just have a seat just right there. We'll hear Mr. Cusack first, and then we'll hear what you have to say following.
All right. And commissioners, this is case 22-0035. This is in the matter of Catherine Davis. Ms. Davis is here. She was a candidate for governor in the May 24th, 2022 primary election cycle. Her declaration of intent to accept campaign contributions was filed on November 6th of 2021, and she qualified to run for the office of governor on March 10th, 2022. She was ultimately an unsuccessful candidate in that primary election. This was a commission-initiated complaint that was filed on April 14th of 2022, where we have alleged that Ms. Davis failed to disclose incomes for years 2017, 2018, 2019, 2020, 2021, and the first quarter of 2022, as required by the statewide personal financial disclosure statement. This is just a little background of what is required for the statewide candidates. The General Assembly has enacted a requirement that requires the public officials each year to disclose their personal financial holdings through a PFDS on a yearly basis, so that the electorate can we'll have the opportunity to identify any potential self-dealing in the official candidate's public acts. The General Assembly files one each year. They qualify to run for office within 15 days of qualifying to run for office, and then in their off years, they file theirs by July 1st every year. Statewide candidates are a little different in that they file what's called an enhanced personal financial disclosure statement. And the enhanced personal financial disclosure statement requires more information than what is required of the General Assembly members. And part of that information is a look into their financial activity, and specifically requires the previous 5 years of financial activity, the source or sources of income for the previous 5 years, and then also for the first quarter of the year in which their election is held. That must be disclosed on the enhanced personal financial disclosure statement. And that's required by OCGA 21550. Their timeline after they qualify for office has moved up a bit, and I think it's because statewide office obviously is one of the most important offices the states have, any statewide official. So the PFDS is required to be filed within 7 days of them qualifying to run for statewide office. Now in the off years when they are not running for office, it is by July 1st every year that they would file this. But when they qualify to run for office, they have 7 days to then file this personal financial disclosure statement. Now here, this is Ms. Davis's personal financial disclosure statement of what was covered for the statement of income. And as you can see, it states other income, total income, expenses, net income, but the years covered is left blank. So there is no way to determine if it's 2017, 2018, 2019, 2020, 2021, or the first quarter of 2022. Also, if it covered the first quarter of 2022, I don't know exactly if this is a total income or not. So that was the violations there, is that these were failed to be disclosed. And those are the violations here, that these sources of income were not properly disclosed. So those are for 2017 through the first quarter of 2022. There was a change in the law prior to qualifying to run for office, and as part of his duty as Executive Secretary, Mr. Amati made sure that whenever people had registered with us or registered their accounts with the commission, they got an additional email that said, this is now a requirement, make sure to do this, make sure to file these years, and basically gave them a rundown of, following the passage of SB 120, what was required of them, what was required of the candidates when they filed their PFDS. And there is a PDF that was included on that, and that will be the next slide of what this would actually look like and how to properly do it. And Ms. Davis, her email that was registered with the commission, received that email on how to do this properly. And here is that PDF that was attached that showed how this should look, what was the proper way. And so those years that weren't covered, or those years that were supposed to be disclosed, weren't disclosed in this PFDS. So those are the violations. That's what occurred here. So Ms. Davis is here, and I'll let her speak to this matter at this time if I don't have any questions.
Mr. Cusack, so when was the, and I know that we have a number of cases that are very similar to this, if not just like this, for the preliminary hearings this morning and the consent orders, but what's the date of Mr. Amati's email? Was it, what I'm trying to figure out is were those, and you may answer this,
Yeah.
were those sent out before or after the due date? Does that make sense? I'm sorry.
So those emails were sent, I broke it up between which statewide office. And I sent a block email to each candidate for each statewide office. And we sent those emails to them after qualifying, but before the reports were due.
Okay.
So we laid out the timeline of when you qualified, therefore you have 7 days from that date, and this is what is required of you. And it's obviously not very large on that screen, but it's 3 or 4 paragraphs, and it's laid out in pretty good detail what was required.
And Mr. Chairman, this was, he sent this on Friday, March 11th, which was the end of qualifying at that time.
Okay. I just wasn't sure if it was sent as almost like a safe harbor email where you were saying, well, here's how you need to do it, after the fact or something, but okay, I understand. Commissioner Thompson?
So, Mr. Kuzak, just for the record, can you explain how you identified Ms. Davis? And is it not true that the whole process was you guys reviewed everybody who was running for statewide office?
That's correct. We reviewed every single PFDS that every person who qualified and ran for statewide office. We reviewed everyone. And so the people who filed theirs correctly didn't get a complaint. The ones that were incorrect got a complaint. So that was making sure that every candidate had these correctly and that the public was going to be able to inspect one of the most important documents when going to the ballot box, so that these were filed correctly and that the public had this information. So it was every single office from governor on down to Public Service Commission. So it was every single statewide office, everybody who qualified, we made sure that all of these were filed correctly.
And I know that we're not to this stage yet. The only thing that we're doing here today, again, is to just find if there were reasonable cause to believe that the Campaign Finance Act was violated. But just so we know, because again, we have a lot of these cases, what does the act provide in terms of the penalty for this type of violation?
Since it's part of the same code section, same section, we could get to the one, 10,000, 25,000 for each one. Now, we haven't taken that position in the consent orders that have been in this case. We have been pretty consistent that for each year that people have not filed, as part of the consent orders would be $125 per year. And then for people who failed to file these was $11.25. So that is what we've been operating off of. We felt as commission staff that if you filed this, you should be paying less of a fine than those who didn't file. And so that was the sort of the matrix we used to come up with the consent orders in these cases. So everyone from governor on down to Public Service Commission has been offered that same figure based on their violations.
Has there been any communication at all with Ms. Davis? And I know we're going to hear from her in a moment, but has there been any communication with her at all about, trying to get a consent order worked out with her?
I believe we spoke not long after the complaint was issued, and I spoke about a consent order, and that was as far as the conversation went.
Okay, all right. Any other questions or comments or anything for?
I do have a question, and it's not necessarily related to how this case will be ruled on, but just in general. And then with my naive take, it may be that the law doesn't allow us to do that. Does the staff provide anywhere on the website examples of how these kind of forms should be filled out? I know you sent a letter out, and I know the letter was sent out, and we're all adults, but is there any examples of highlighting, here's what should be filled out on these forms?
So, I don't know really off the top of my head. We list the law on the website, and that's sort of where our hands are tied on what we can list there.
Right.
So we list the law, and we try not to get too far outside of our statutes and rules and regulations.
Mm-hmm.
So I can't say for certain if there's an example on there or not.
Does the law prevent us from having examples?
I don't think it would. I think if we do a John Doe PFDS for maybe statewide office and then a John Doe PFDS for...
Joe, actually, I'll take this. So Commissioner Hicks, that's a great question. On the website, there are forms and there are example templates of how those forms.
Okay.
And we actually break it apart for local and state level PFDS filers, and we have a specific example for statewide partisan filers as well.
Perfect, answer my question. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments with respect to Mr. Cusack?
God, I'm not making it up.
Okay. Ms. Davis, we'll be glad to hear from you. Thank you very much for coming this morning.
Good morning. Thank you for allowing me to come. I appreciate your question, sir, because I never found any instructions beginning with even how to access the form that needed to be filled out. So until I called someone in Mr. Cusac's office to get instructions on even how to access the form, from there I called at least 10 times. Once I didn't realize I was in violation of the law because there weren't any instructions provided that said, okay, do this, or don't do this, or anything. There was a sample PDF sent, but again, that didn't clearly delineate that I was supposed to go line by line, etc. So I made a mistake. I did, and I didn't understand all of the detail until after I got Mr. Cusac's letter and it said I was in violation, and then I called someone in Mr. Cusac's office about 9 times. Once I figured out what I had done wrong, I called again to get instructions to make sure that I was absolutely doing it correctly. And even the person I spoke to couldn't help me at one point, towards the end. She couldn't help me. She didn't know how to appropriately account for my income. And I guess I did speak with you. I don't know anything about a consent agreement or anything, but I specifically got instructions from Mr. Cusack on how to record my income. And he did say that there might be a hearing, etc. So I'm not sure if that's what he meant by consent agreement or not. But this was my first time running for a statewide office, and I didn't understand all of the detail that I needed to go into because it didn't tell me anywhere. And if it was on the website, I certainly didn't see it. And like I said, I couldn't even find the form until I called and someone told me how to do it. So, yes, I acknowledge I made a mistake in my original filing. It was a mistake. It wasn't an intentional withholding of any information regarding my income. And once the mistake was called to my attention, I immediately set out to fix it, and I did, but I was only able to successfully complete it after numerous calls back and forth to Mr. Cusac's office. So I would encourage you to give instruction, a little more detailed instruction, beginning with how to even access the form, because I didn't know, and I had several people searching with me. So yes, I made a mistake, but it was not an intentional one. And once the mistake was brought to my attention, I immediately corrected it. But only with assistance from Mr. Cusac's office. And even members of his staff couldn't help at one point.
Commissioner Thompson?
So this may be for Ms. Davis or Mr. Cusack. So the PFDS has been amended?
I'm sorry, say again?
The form has been amended?
Oh yes, I corrected it, yes.
We did it on the phone together and made sure it was correct.
Okay. So this almost sounds, Mr. Chairman, like this is something that they could talk out instead of moving forward. If Ms. Davis is open to it, I don't know that, I mean, we can go forward, but.
Well,
Could I have 5 minutes to talk to her?
look, I was already going to make that very suggestion that, what we're here for today, and I know, Ms. Davis, that you may not have understood the process where we are at this point, but when we were talking about hearing, where we are is a preliminary hearing to find or to determine whether there's probable cause to believe that you violated the Campaign Finance Act. And that there can be discussion between you and our staff office to try to work out, as you've heard discussed already, these consent agreements. And I think it sounds like this is the perfect type of situation, especially since the documents have already been updated to form, where y'all may be able to work something out as opposed to us making a finding today that may refer this matter on to the Office of State Administrative Hearings for there to be an even more formal hearing on down the road. Okay, so What I'm suggesting at this point is that we'll give this case sort of a brief continuance for the moment, and we'll come back to it before we conclude our work today. How about that?
That's good.
And I believe that I can do that on my own, just to continue the hearing for the time being. Okay. And I know that you have other cases, so Ms. Davis, if you don't mind, we have to cooperate with us just a little bit because Mr. Cusack may have some other cases that he has to deal with in the meantime.
Sure.
Okay, thank you. All right, with that, I'm going to go ahead and move to item C on the preliminary hearing calendar. That's case number 22-0036-C in the matter of Candace Taylor. Mr. Cusack, is that your case as well?
Yes, it is.
Okay, what do we have here? Well, first of all, is Ms. Taylor here or anyone on her behalf? Okay, don't hear anything. Go ahead.
And that, I haven't heard from anyone on this case, Mr. Chairman.
Okay.
But this is going to be along the same lines. This is in the matter of Candace Taylor, case 22-0036-C. Ms. Taylor was a candidate for governor in the May 24th, 2022 primary election cycle. Her DOI was filed on January 9th of 2021, and she qualified to run on March 7th of 2022, and she was an unsuccessful candidate in that primary election. This complaint was filed on the same day, and you'll notice that I believe all of these complaints were all filed on the same day, so that we had a consistent time period. It was filed April 14th of 2022, and alleged that she failed to disclose the incomes for 2017, 2018, 2019, 2020, and then the first quarter of 2022. Won't go over the law again, we discussed that earlier, but she had 7 days to file this and then was required to disclose the previous 5 years in the first quarter of her financials or her income for the previous 5 years. And here is her statement of income, which disclosed year 2021. So it's missing the first quarter of 2022, 2017, 2018, 2019, and 2020. She did file this on time, and it was, the rest of the form seemed to be in order, but those violations violations that were alleged that I'd ask you to find probable cause on is that she failed to disclose her income and sources of income from 2017, 2018, 2019, 2020, and the first quarter of 2022. And then she received the same email as well from Mr. Amati for her campaign email, and was given that same example as well on how to properly do this. And I do want to say, just to bring this up, we did have candidates call in during this period when this was due and ask for help, and we assisted them in properly filing this. So that is something that there were some candidates who called in and asked for help with this, and we walked them through how to properly, what buttons to click, everything like that. So we try to be as helpful as we can when filling these out. We will walk you through on how to do this. I sat with a legislator for an hour last week and made sure his CCDRs all matched up and sort of taught him how to do that. So if anybody does call in, we are more than happy to help. It's when we get past these statutory periods where we have to act upon the law and what we're required to do. So I just wanted to make that clear as well.
Yeah, and we didn't do this in the last case, and I'm going to go ahead and do this now because I know that we have a number of these cases, and I'm not trying to drag this out at all, but I'm going to have Mr. Amati go through, and I'm going to have him do two things, again, just to perfect the record to some degree. I'm going to have you, and again, quickly, as you know, I want you to go through that email and how the email explained, the process for filling this, the form out. And then I also want you to go through and explain where you find that form on the website.
Sure. So, as I mentioned earlier, the emails were sent in block, so anyone running for governor was on one set of emails. Now, they were BCC, so we didn't have an endless chain of 37 back and forth. But I'm looking at the email I sent to Ms. Davis at her Gmail. She registered with the commission, as well as Ms. Taylor, a number of other candidates for governor. It identifies that if you're receiving this email, it's because our records indicate that you or a campaign which listed your email address as a point of contact have filed a declaration of intent to seek statewide partisan office. It details that following the passage of SB 120 as it relates to the enhanced financial disclosure, the legislature had made some changes and had extended the so-called look-back provision regarding their financial income from the first quarter of the election year and the previous calendar year to now include the previous 5 calendar years, 2017 to the present, as well as requirements that you include the income, the source or sources of your income for those time periods. I highlighted that many of the other obligations remain the same, and below I bullet point sort of everything that these enhanced financial disclosure statements entail, which again, I reiterate the bullet points. They have to include their financial affairs for the 5 prior calendar years and the first quarter of that election year. That shall include the source or sources of the income for those periods. Also entails filing individual stocks, dividend salaries, liabilities, assets, debts, current accounts, loans, etc., investment accounts, taxes due and unpaid, any source of income that needs to be disclosed in forms of property. So it lays out in pretty specific detail, point by point, everything that is included in the financial disclosure, as well as specifically enumerates what has changed. And that email was sent to every single candidate for statewide office, some of whom received multiple emails because they had multiple email accounts on file.
And what's the PDF that was sent with that?
The PDF is an example of particularly sections A through H, which includes specifically the enhanced financial disclosure block. And so here in our example, we use Altria and Coca-Cola as example corporations that would pay you a salary, and of course, different years, different amounts of income, other sources of income, and how you total that out to the net, and you calculate all that down at the bottom, including liabilities, notes payable to the bank, interest, real estate mortgages, etc. So it's
a form to work off.
It's a form to work off, correct, and everyone received that email.
Okay. And then just really quickly, just for the record, how do you get to the form on the website?
Sure. So it's ethics.ga.gov, and then under the forms and publications section, we have every type of possible form, specifically a personal financial disclosure form, and links to examples of those forms.
But not the insurance one.
Nothing for minutes.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Amati. I just wanted to make sure that we had that for the record. Are there any other questions or comments for Mr. Cusack with regard to the Taylor matter? Mr. Thompson, or Commissioner Thompson, sorry.
So again, you've reached out to the candidate and there has been no communication since, is that correct?
I reached out to them. I helped them correct the filing. And I said, you need to enter into a consent order. I'm happy to get you over something in writing. And then they asked for a little time because campaign season was going on. I said, absolutely, I'll get back with you after campaign season's over. And then I haven't heard anything since.
So this has been amended as well?
Yes, this has been amended. I was on the phone with them and helped them. I believe it was her accountant that amended this as well.
And we have there's no issue in this particular matter regarding notice of today's hearing, is that right?
No, there's not.
Commissioner Watts?
So for the individuals that aren't here, or that you haven't heard from in quite some time, but yet have amended their filings, I mean, there's nothing stopping us from moving forward with or finding probable cause, and then you all trying to contact them to resolve this informally.
That's correct, yes.
Right, okay. I mean, if notice has been given, we can tick through these things.
The key there would just be, before the matter is actually referred to the Office of State Administrative Hearings. I mean, and then, even then, I guess you could still try to work it out, but that would be, the point would be to try to keep it from being referred over there.
It's just a matter, if I can get someone on the phone, I'm happy to try to get it done and get them something in email very quickly. So.
Yeah, but those are things that we do all the time. It's, it's actually, that's similar to what we're doing with Mr. Reed's case.
Correct, yes.
Yeah, okay, all right. With that being said, I'm going to go ahead and I'll make the motion that we find reasonable grounds to believe that that Ms. Taylor has violated the Campaign Finance Act as alleged in the complaint.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. Do we have any discussion? Hearing none, I'll call the question. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? No. Motion carries. All right, we'll go ahead and call the next case, which is case number 22-0037C in the matter of Tom Williams. Mr. Cusack?
Yes, Commissioners, this is going to be the same type of issue, and the next case actually doesn't deal with this issue, so you'll get something a little different next. But this is in the matter of Tom Williams, case 22-0037-C. Mr. Williams ran for governor in the May 24th, 2022 primary. His DOI was filed March 21, 2022, which was actually after qualifying for office, and he qualified to run on March 10th of 2022. So this is a little later DOI than we normally see in these matters. But he was ultimately the unsuccessful candidate in the May 24th, 2022 primary election. This was filed on the same date as all the other complaints, April 14th of 2022, and it alleged that he failed to file the 2017, 2018, 2019, 2020, and the first quarter of 2022 incomes for those years, failed to list those on his PFDS. We've gone over the law on this, that they must disclose the previous 5 years in the first quarter of their income, the first quarter of the year in which the election is held, which would have been 2022 in this matter. And here is his statement of income, which shows the calendar year of 2021 and lacking the first quarter of 2022 and then 2017 through 2020. So he failed to disclose his sources of income for 2017, 2018, 2019, 2020, and the first quarter of 2022. And I'd ask you to find probable cause on this matter.
Has he amended his?
He is not.
No. You had any contact at all with him?
I believe he's had contact with Miss Easterwood, which I don't know if that was very fruitful, put it that way.
Okay. Any issues with notice of the hearing today?
No, it was sent to his address on file with the commission.
Okay. Any questions or comments from the commission? Hearing none, does anybody have a motion? I'll make the motion. I'll move that we find reasonable grounds to believe that Mr. Williams violated the Campaign Finance Act as alleged in the complaint. Do I have a second?
Second.
Got a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, I'll call the question. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Move to the next case. Item E, case number 22-0083C in the matter of Chastity Pawlik. Mr. Cusack, you said this case is different. Let's
It's a little
hear
bit
it.
different.
Well, do we have it? I'm sorry, I didn't even check on this last one.
We were talking.
We were. Is there anyone, is Ms. Pawlik here or anyone on her behalf? Why don't you answer it?
Hello? One for us.
So this is.
I'm just going to go ahead and wait a second. I'm going to do this backwards because I didn't ask. I assumed that Mr. Williams wasn't here online or no one on his behalf. Okay, all right. Go ahead, Mr. Cusack.
This is in the matter of Chastity Pawlik. She was a candidate for House District 164 in May 24th of 2022, which I believe is the Savannah area. She has never filed a declaration of intention to accept campaign contributions with the commission. She qualified to run for office on March 11th of 2022, and ultimately she was an unsuccessful candidate in the May 24th, 2022 primary. Even though she hasn't filed a DOI, she filed a PFDS on time. So these have to do with her campaign contribution disclosure reports. It's strange, I've never seen it happen, but that's what happened. We filed her PFDS on time, but never has filed a DOI or reported any type of campaign contributions or anything like that. The procedural history in this case is that this case was filed on May 26th of 2022, and it was alleged that the respondent, Ms. Pawlik, had solicited campaign contributions and also made expenditures without registering with the commission. She has yet to file a response to the complaint, but she has acknowledged service from her Twitter account. And her YouTube channel as well. So she posted a video holding up the complaint. It used some colorful language, and but she had the complaint, was served with the complaint, and then posted on her Twitter account, which I'll show you the tweet. She actually tweeted at the official ethics account. So she tweeted the cover letter we send with the complaint, and then she replied with some colorful language saying that she was given the authority to deliver this response from the highest level of government, and that we don't have jurisdiction over her, and that all Georgia officials are under the control and influence of a terrorist organization. So just...
Are we a terrorist organization?
It's hard to tell. Hard to tell. Couldn't quite figure that out. So yeah, interesting one here. But she has been served, and there is evidence of taking contributions and making expenditures, which I'll get into. But here's when you go and try to find her on our system. It pops up as filing her PFDS on time. So she obviously knew of some registration requirements that there were. It's just she never registered for the campaign contribution side of the system. But here's a Facebook post where she's saying, I went to pick up a donation for my campaign and left with this generous man's ball cap. And then here is a picture of a yard sign that was out. And then here's another, I guess in better Chastity Public, Georgia House of Representatives. So there's evidence that she has taken contributions, made expenditures, and hasn't reported any of these. So this is one of those cases what we would have done if she had entered the case. We would have filed a subpoena to get records of the campaign, figure out exactly how much activity there was. Because with only this evidence here, we really have no idea how much activity there actually was in terms of contributions she took and expenditures made. So normally we would amend the complaint with more specificity once we get that information of here's the exact total of the amount contributed, here's the exact total of the amount expended, but without her cooperation and without her being able to turn those documents over, being somewhat cooperative, we're unable to do that. But we can say, based on finding the probable cause here, or asking you to find probable cause, that there is probable cause that she accepted money for her campaign, made expenditures for her campaign, failed to file a DOI, failed to report those contributions and expenditures. And that she failed to report or failed to file an April 30th, 2022 report. So we're asking you to find probable cause in regards to those violations on this case.
Those are all the allegations that are set forth in the complaint, correct?
Yes, it's just 4 allegations.
Okay. Do you have any questions or comments by the commission? Hearing none, do I have a motion? I will again make the motion. I will move that we find reasonable grounds. Sorry, that Ms. Pavlik violated the Campaign Finance Act for the reasons stated in the complaint. Do I have a second?
Second.
Got a second? Do we have any discussion? Hearing none, I'll call the question. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. The next item, which was F, that has been moved to the consent order calendar, or portion of the calendar. G has been continued. We'll move to H, which is case number 22-0042C in the matter of Derek Jackson.
And I believe, Mr. Jackson, we have a consent order if we want to move that to the consent order portion of the calendar.
He's here, I think we just got
Oh, okay.
Representative Jackson.
I didn't see you come in, I'm sorry. How are you?
All is well.
Good, good, glad you're with us. Well, no, you're probably not all day. Yeah. I don't know if we're just gonna call that, well, since he's here, we're gonna put that at the top of the consent order. That's fine. Okay. We'll still call it item. No, it'll be under DP. All right, we'll go to item number I, then it's case number 22-0043C, in the matter of Rashid Malik. Mr. Malik, you're here? All right. Mr. Cusack?
This is 22-0043-C in the matter of Rashid Malik. This is dealing with, he got caught up in the sweep of making sure everyone's PFDS for statewide office was correctly filled out. But he was a candidate for Lieutenant Governor May 24th, 2022 primary. His DOI was filed on March 26th of 2022, qualified to run for office on March 7th of 2022, and ultimately was the unsuccessful candidate in that primary election. The complaint alleged, it was a commission-initiated complaint. This is a little different in that there has been a failure to file the PFDS in this matter, and it still has yet to be filed as of this day. So that's the allegation, is that it's just a failure to file the PFDS. Here is his account right here. He is registered on the PFDS portion of the ethics website, and it is still in the unfiled portion of his account. He had 7 days to file this after qualifying to run for office and has failed to do so. The single violation is a failure to file this PFDS in violation of 21550. I will say Mr. Malik has emailed our office numerous times. We've been trying to get it filed. I've tried to set up some times to call him and get this filed and walk him through it, but it just hasn't happened yet. So maybe since he's here today, we could get it filed, but that's the violation. It's just a failure to file. It's just need him to click some buttons and enter the information, and then that's pay a fine, and it's rectified. So that's one that will have to end up getting filed.
That also sounds like a case that y'all, do you think y'all want to talk? You want to discuss this today before we actually go and make a decision on finding reasonable grounds and give it an opportunity to work this out?
Sure. I just want to present my side, what I tried to do to correct everything from the very beginning.
Okay, sure. We'll go ahead and hear from you, and then, after we hear from you, if you want to, if you still want us to continue the hearing for a moment so that you can talk to Mr. Cusack and try to work it out.
Sure. My main purpose is to learn, because I'm a newcomer in this area, and also to educate others who they plan to run again, I tried from the very beginning sending emails and numerous phone calls, and did not get any positive response to resolve things or to address the issue. So life moved on, and all of a sudden they get this letter saying that I need to give so much money, and that's a huge amount for me. And I called, and then I received very nice email from a good lady. Personally, from my ethics, I don't want to mention her name if she's not here, but she's from, I think, Mr. Cusack's office, And if you want to know her name, I can say, because I have to respect your demand. But personally, I don't want to reveal her name because she didn't do anything wrong to me. She said, okay, I'm going to walk you through. I was excited, wow, I'm going to need some help. So after that, I called her 3 times the same day. I didn't get any response. So the office does not actively respond to your inquiry and request, and things fall through the crack. And it is not my intention to violate any rules and regulation. I'm a law-abiding citizen. I like to continue with my good life with the system, but I would like to request whoever is in charge or the group of you to waive the fine and let me correct the mistake which has been done without my knowledge or understanding or intentionally.
Well, what were your, sorry. Commissioner Thompson, go ahead.
Thank you for showing up today. You said you called 3 times. Did you leave messages that were not, I believe you, don't need to see it. You left messages.
Yeah, I think I got a call next day or maybe email. The lady was very enthusiastic in her email to help me out. Then all of a sudden she backed away.
But you left voice messages.
Every time. I I called at 10:55, 3:01 PM, and 4:22 PM on June 29. And before that, I got emails which I sent to the office. If you want to look at it, I'll pass it to you, and if it makes any sense to.
What was the date of that again? You said that the date that you called was June the 29th?
June 29.
Okay, was that after you already, that was after you
After,
received
yeah.
the letter for this hearing?
I was planning to resolve, but the letter I'm looking at in email, again, I'm not saying the name over here, March 25 at 12:12 PM, March 25, 12:41 PM. I've got more emails in my account if you want to see. April 4, 3 PM. Sorry to take your time. March 24, 11:50 AM, and I've got more.
Did you ever file a PFDS?
To be honest, I don't have any idea. But I'm more than willing to work with somebody, like the good lady who emailed me that she's willing to work with me to guide me through. I'm more than willing to do that.
Did you know as far back as March that you needed to file the PFDS?
I knew I got to do something, and that's the reason I was reaching out. What is something I can do? This is the first time I'm experiencing this statewide.
Okay. Mr. Cusack?
I'll just say, I know Ms. Arnold talked to him numerous times and tried to walk him through this and gave directions on how to file it. 'Cause we got it registered in the system and then was giving directions on how to file, and those weren't particularly followed. And I personally have emailed as well. I wanted to get it filed. I'm trying to get everyone's filed, and I asked for a time to call him. I believe I sent the email last week and I haven't received any follow-up to that email. So I'm more than willing to help him file and trying to get this filed before these hearings and get these wrapped up, but never heard back. So that's, I know our office has tried.
Mr. Malik, I'm willing to give you the opportunity if you want it to meet with Mr. Cusack today, while we take a break at some point in time and y'all try to work out, a consent order in this matter so that you can get this thing filed and you work out any other arrangements that need to be made. If you want to do that, that's fine, and then we'll come back to your case later on in the calendar if you've got time, to be able to stay and to do that. Mr. Cusack's got some other cases.
It's a lengthy process.
Well, I know, I wasn't saying they were necessarily going to go out there and file, but it's something that they could agree to. They just come back in. No, they could agree to come back in and say, well, they're going to continue they want to move to continue the hearing to the next one because it's going to go filed. Okay, is that something you would like to do, is to go out and speak with Mr. Cusack?
I want to
and see if
resolve it
there's-
as soon as possible.
All right. I'll give you the opportunity to do that. Again, if it doesn't work out, then we'll come back in here and we'll go ahead and, we'll make whatever finding we need to make, okay? Is that agreeable? Yes?
Yes.
Okay. All right, so we're going to continue that hearing for the time being, and we're going to go ahead and move on to item number J on the calendar. It's case number 22-0050-C in the matter of Christian Y. Smith.
Mr. Chairman, my name's Tim Baywall. I'm one of the staff attorneys here. We haven't met yet. I would just ask that you put this on the consent list. This was just sent over this morning, but we resolved that case.
And you guys are going to keep me straight now. That's going to be ED. Okay. Commissioner Hicks is really going to now tell me that we need to, put that on all on one thing for all the consents, right? All right. So now we're going to move to item K, case number 22. Oh, no, I'm sorry, that's already been moved. It's now L. It's going to be case number 22-0094-C in the matter of William Park Freeman. Looks like that's Mr. Pruitt.
Yes, sir.
All right. Gives Mr. Cusack at least a little break.
Good morning, Commissioners. Thank you. I'm Jacob Pruitt. I'm a first time appearing here, so it's but in the matter of William Park Freeman, case number 22-0094-C. the background of this case.
Hold on one second, Mr. Pruitt. I just want to make sure again, just because we've got the audio and everything going. Is Mr. Freeman or anyone on his behalf attending? Okay, I'm sorry, Mr. Pruitt. Sometimes I forget to do that. Go ahead.
The background of this case is that Mr. Freeman was a candidate for the Georgia House of Representatives District 88 in November 2022, and filed a declaration of intent to accept campaign contributions on March 21st, 2022. Qualified to run on March 9th, 2022 in the Republican primary where he was unopposed. As such, he was successful as the primary candidate. The commission initiated and issued a complaint on June 2nd, 2022, along with the subpoena for his bank records because he filed no. His CCDR was a little strange. I think there's a slide of it here where all of his financial information was listed as investments, but there was no sources listed for income or contributions or who gave it, and no list of disclosures of expenditures. And Mr. Freeman also failed to file or file them on time. That one campaign contribution disclosure report was late. The law is that the legislature has required candidates to file disclosures of contributions and expenditures under a specific schedule on every election year, including one to be filed on April 30th that Mr. Freeman failed to file. And he also previously ran for the State Senate, District 41 in 2020, for which he qualified on March 3rd, 2020. He never filed a CCDR for that election cycle, that campaign either, nor did he file a personal financial disclosure statement for that election. And then there's just showing that he did file any of these reports. And so we are alleging that he had 5 violations. He didn't file his April 30th, 2020 campaign disclosure, or his June 30th, 2020 campaign disclosure, or his September 30th, 2020 campaign disclosure. Any of those disclosures. Mr. Freeman did call me after he received this complaint and indicated that he was gathering his records to bring to us and was going to come to the office and sit down with us and try to get everything sorted out and straightened out. And then never showed up and has not responded to phone calls or emails since then.
So, sorry, so it looks like I'm looking at the complaint here. So I just want to make sure that I understand exactly what the allegations are. So we're looking at, in terms of the specific violations, we're looking at paragraph 7, 8, and 9. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
No, 11. Yeah, thank you, okay. All right. Did any of the commissioners have any questions or comments for Mr. Pruitt? There hasn't been any other contact?
No, sir. He's not responded to phone calls or emails since he called and said, yeah, I'll be in on Monday with all of my paperwork. I'm just getting it together.
How long ago was that?
That was the beginning of June.
Okay, and since he called and discussed this, I assume there's no issue about notice then, right?
Exactly, yeah.
Okay. All right. Any other questions or comments? All right, I'll go ahead and, I'll make the motion. I move that we find reasonable grounds to believe that William Clark Freeman violated the Campaign Finance Act for all reasons stated in the complaint. Do I have a second?
Second.
I've got a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, I'll call the question. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, motion carries. All right, I believe we're done with the preliminary hearings then, is that right?
That's correct.
Okay, it is 10 after 11. Does any of the commissioners need to take a break, or y'all want to plow through and do these consent orders? Plow through. Hey, I'm all in favor. Let's go. Yeah. Yep. Yep. All right.
We have Joe back.
No, he's out.
We grab him.
Will you grab, yeah, thank you very much. Hey, Mr. Lane, how you doing?
Good, sir, how are you?
Good. Mr. Cusack, we're going to start through the consent orders, and maybe I shouldn't say this, but I'm going to. We're going to go through these rather quickly. We're going to get the Cliff Notes version. I know I probably shouldn't say it in that fashion, but that's what we're going to do. The first one that we're going to do then,
We got Representative Jackson.
yeah, I'm trying to figure out which item we actually named that one. Was it E? DD, okay. So we're going to call the case, and under the consent orders, we're going to call the case 22-0064-C in the matter of Lester Jackson.
This one's Derek.
I'm sorry, kindly. It's item H that was under the preliminary hearings that is now moved to DD. It's case number 22-0042C in the matter of Derek Jackson.
In your defense, DD is Derek Jackson, CC is Lester Jackson, so they're right back to back.
Okay. Mr. Cusack, what do we have?
Yes, this is the matter of Derek Jackson. Mr. Jackson's present. We figured out a consent order in this matter. He was a candidate for lieutenant governor and had to file that enhanced PFDS. He missed calendar years 2017, 2018, 2019, 2020, and 2021. I'm going to work with him to get that amended so that it's proper. But he's given me his number and those years of financials so I can get them entered for him and we can check and make sure it's right. So he has brought that today. So he will be paying a fine of $625, but that should be amended very shortly to correctly account for what should be on the PFDS.
So I'm guessing then, well, I guess it's not really a consent order, right? It's more, I mean, do we have it at this point, or is it just continuing the case from the preliminary hearing calendar?
I think you can enter a consent order contingent upon the amendment within 30 days.
Well, I think that we should treat that as a continuance from the preliminary hearing calendar myself. I mean, because there's no telling what, I just don't want to get in a situation where it may blow up again. I'm not saying that you guys aren't going to get it figured out, but I'm going to actually, I'm going to make a motion that,
If you want to give me about 10 minutes after, I can get this entered and show him, and that way it's done today. Once Mr. Baywall starts presenting cases, I should have a little time, and I can bring it back forward.
okay, that's fine. Let me just make sure I put the right case down this time. All right, so we're going to go ahead and, what are your other cases, Mr. Cusack?
I have two more, or actually 3 more. Ms. Seaver, Mr. McGregor, and Mr. Brooks. And I know Mr. Sparks is here on behalf of Mr. Brooks.
Let's do Ms. Severs first. I'm going to go ahead and call the case 22-0039-C in the matter of Jeannie Seaver, for purposes of the consent order.
Yes, Ms. Seaver was a candidate for lieutenant governor. I believe she's joining via Zoom right now. Ms. Seaver, as part of the PFDS, failed to file the 2017, 2018, 2019, 2020, and first quarter of 2022 income statements. She has since filed those, and upon receipt of the complaint, amended her filings accordingly and handled that and made sure those were correct. And she has agreed to enter into a $625, or actually hold on,
Sorry. You said,
sorry. Ms. Seaver actually failed to file her personal financial disclosure statement within the time period. And she has now filed that. It was filed on April 20th of 2022. So it was due within 7 days of qualifying. It was filed almost a month later. She has since filed that PFDS and correctly filed it. And so she has entered into a consent order of $1,125 for that failure to file. But she has since filed at that time.
And everything's been signed?
Yes, she has submitted a signed consent order. We just got it this morning. I do have copies for the commissioners if you would like those.
Ms. Seaver, do you have anything that you would like to add?
yes, sir, I do have a few things I'd like to add, please, if you don't mind.
Yes, ma'am, go ahead.
First of all, I just want to say that you are totally correct in dealing with Mrs. Easterwood. She has been awesome to work with. She's very responsive and she represents you well. I just wanted to give you that. Number two, Mr. Cusack and I have been going back and forth negotiating. And one of the things that I had an issue with, and I'll tell you just a couple things, or possibly after listening to a lot of things that people have been stating. One thing that wasn't discussed was the fact that when you file an enhanced personal financial statement, you have to go into a totally different login than you did when you were filing your campaign finance report. And that was a challenge, and I am not going to sit here and make excuses. There is no excuse for me not filing a timely report. There's no excuse, and I'm not going to make one, but I promise you, I intended to file this report. I don't know how many of you have ever tried to complete one of those, but it does take some time and some research to do it when you have to put your own personal personal finance accounting out to the world to see. So that does take some time, but I'm not. But one of the things that Mr. Cusack and I were going back and forth was in the consent order. And it basically says the findings of fact, okay? And then the conclusion of the law says, respondent failed to file a personal financial disclosure statement in violation of the code, okay? But if we're all about transparency here, we need to make sure that, and I went back with Mr. Cusack on this, and he respectfully honored my request. In the findings of the fact, if you have the consent order in front of you, I requested a paragraph basically saying that the respondent submits that she filed her PFDS upon being notified by the commission that she had failed to file her PFDS and immediately took action to rectify the lack of filing. Respondent was cooperative with commission staff and took corrective action to promptly file for her PFDS on April 20th, 2022. I just want to make sure that it is, because if this is out for the public transparency, there's no indication in this consent that basically says that I ever filed it. So I appreciate Mr. Cusack for willing to put that information in my consent order. And I just thought as moving forward, maybe that could be a consideration to be, language to be added to the consent order for those that have actually filed. Other than that, I begrudgingly agreed to pay the $1,000. I think it's very steep. I think that I'm not asking for a special exception by any means because of all the other people that are being held accountable. But I just thought that I would try to negotiate because that's what I do for a living. I'm trying to reduce that fee for all those that have been charged to $600, which Mr. Cusack said, I wish I could do that, but I can't. We got to be consistent, and I respected that. And upon that, I pretty much signed the consent order. But I just wanted to make it perfectly clear, it was never my intention never to file this report. It's just, it just took time, and as we all know, working a full-time job, running a statewide campaign, and also trying to keep up with all the compliance issues in everyday life. I apologize for filing late. I do take your requests very seriously, and I just want to say I apologize to each and every one of you for my late filing of my financial statement. Thank you very much for the opportunity to share a few words.
And Ms. Seaver, we appreciate the fact that you've taken your time this morning to actually attend the meeting and to give us your thoughts. And we also do appreciate, I'm sure that Mr. Cusack would not have agreed to put that paragraph in the consent order if he did not believe that that you were cooperative in this process. So again, we appreciate you in that regard as well. Do we have any other questions or comments from the commission with regard to the consent order? Hearing none, I'll go ahead and make a motion that we adopt the consent order as presented in the matter of Jeannie Seaver, case number 22-0039C.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. Any discussion? Go ahead and call the question. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. That consent order shall be entered. Go ahead and, well, which other case do you have? What's your next one?
I believe I have A and B.
Okay. We'll go ahead and call then case number 22-0038C in the matter of Mac McGregor.
Mr. McGregor was a candidate for lieutenant governor in this election cycle. He failed to file his income for calendar year 2017, 2018, 2019, 2020 in the first quarter of 2022, and has agreed to pay a $625 fine as a civil penalty in this matter for the failure to find that, failure to properly disclose the income for those calendar years. He has already paid the civil penalty, was very cooperative right away, amended his filing to reflect the proper years. I helped him through it, helped him get those years filed for him when he called in, and was cooperative in this matter. So I just ask you to accept the consent order for him.
All right, do we have any, and Mr. Brooks present, anyone on his behalf? I'm sorry, McGregor, looking at the next case already. No one present? Okay. Does anyone from the commission have any questions or comments regarding the consent order? I hear none. Do I have a motion?
I'll move to accept the consent order.
All right, and a second?
Second.
All right, got a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, I'll call the question. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Call the next case of yours, which is 22-0040C in the matter of Tyrone Brooks. Is Tyrone Brooks present? Anyone on his behalf?
I believe Mr. Brooks is on Zoom, and then Mr. Sparks is represented him in this matter.
Okay. Mr. Sparks, you going to have any comments?
Only if Mr. Brooks wishes me to,
Okay,
but he's welcome to speak for himself.
sure. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Mr. Cusack.
And this is in the matter of Tyrone Brooks, 22-0040C. Mr. Brooks was a candidate for lieutenant governor, and in his PFDS, he failed to disclose calendar years 2017, 2018, 2019, 2020, and 2022. Mr. Sparks reached out after Mr. Brooks had received the complaint, immediately amended the PFDS to be proper, was very upfront, very cooperative, very easy to work with. So thank you, Mr. Sparks, for that. I just want to put that on the record so you all know it was a very easy process. Got this signed consent order back to me, and he has agreed to pay a $625 fine in this matter, and so I would ask you to accept the consent order.
Mr. Brooks, do you wish to add anything?
I just want to thank the commission, in particular, you all have been very helpful for helping me to amend my, it was just an honest mistake. I improperly read it, thought I filled it out correctly. Once I was notified that I didn't, I quickly tried to amend it. Apologies for the mistake, and again, I appreciate you all for being helpful and just walking us through it. I would like to see next go around it be a little bit clearer on exactly how, maybe these forms could be attached to a lot of the candidates' information in the packet, and some of the other packets have things in it. I didn't necessarily see this in it. That would be it all. Just listening to some of the other candidates, it seemed like we all kind of, were moving kind of fast and didn't identify exactly what we needed to do it. I know I fall into that category, but you all have been very helpful. I appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Brooks. Thanks for your time attending the meeting this morning. Again, Mr. Sparks, anything to add?
No, sir.
Okay, all right. I'll go ahead and make the motion that in case number 22-0040C in the matter of Tower on Books, we accept the consent order as presented. Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, I'll call the question. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? No. Motion carries. All right. Is that up for you?
And Ms. Davis has agreed to a consent order as well, if the commission would like me to present the proposed terms of that.
Yep, let's go ahead. This is case number 22-0035C in the matter of Catherine Davis.
Yes, that's correct. As you heard prior in the prior presentation, Ms. Davis failed to disclose the income for the calendar year 2017, 2018, 2019, 2020, and the first quarter of 2022. She was a candidate for governor. She has since rectified and amended her filing and has agreed to a $625 civil penalty for the failure to disclose those years. So I'd ask the commission to accept the consent order in that matter.
We've heard that case in pretty good detail to this point. Does any commissioner have any questions or comments? Hearing none, do I have a motion?
I move to accept that consent order.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Got a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, I'll call the question. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you very much, Ms. Davis, for coming today and being very cooperative with Mr. Cusack. It's very good to know that you can come and y'all can get this worked out, okay?
I just want to make a recommendation to you all if I can.
Yes, ma'am.
Going forward, it would be helpful. Apparently, there were like 22 of us that did not fill out the form correctly. It would have been helpful if before you all issued a complaint against me and brought me before the committee, if someone had just called and said, hey, do you realize you didn't fill out the form correctly? And I would have immediately done it and saved us all of this time in my campaign, $625. So going forward, if someone could just notify the candidates before a complaint is issued against them and we have to present before you, that would be so helpful. Thank you so much. You all have a blessed rest of your day.
Thank you, Ms. Davis. All right.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, ma'am, go ahead. This is Ms. Seaver?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Mr. Cusack, you told me that everybody was behind on.
Mr. Cusack has had to step out. He's working on a different case.
Okay, well, he had advised that each one of us were having to be charged $1,125. And I tried to negotiate him down to $600. But he said that every candidate that he was dealing with right now, that they were all going to be paying the same amount. And I'm just a little confused on why that's changed.
Ms. Seaver, the $1,125 were for the individuals who failed to file altogether. The $625 was the number for those who did file but just missed some of the things in the filing they were supposed to file.
Oh, okay, so if you're not timely, then it's $1,100.
Correct,
okay.
Correct.
Okay, all right. Okay, I just wanted to make sure I understood that. Thank you.
And hey, I'm Peter Taylor, and I did not know I was supposed to come today because I mailed my seat in with my paperwork, but I understand that y'all brought my case up about me here.
Yes, ma'am, Ms. Taylor, we've already had your preliminary hearing, and we found that there were reasonable grounds to believe that the Campaign Finance Act had been violated, and so the matter is going to be referred to the Office of State Administrative Hearings. You have around 30 days if you want to contact commission staff and try to have the matter resolved before it gets referred over to the Office of State Administrative Hearings for a more formal hearing.
Okay, so I paid my fee already and turned in my paperwork and emailed back the office, and I did not know I was supposed to come today. So
Yeah, I'm not,
Understand.
yeah, I'm not sure exactly what fee you're speaking about, Ms. Taylor. I don't know if it's the late fee or what, but again, this is something now that I would urge you to contact the commission staff and have a conversation with them about, an effort to try to get the matter resolved before this case gets referred to the Office of State Administrative Hearings, okay?
Okay, so I can't do whatever this is here. I need to contact, Cusack's office. Is that what you're telling me?
Yes, ma'am, your case has already been heard this morning.
Okay.
Okay? All right.
Okay.
Yeah, we're going to go ahead and take we're going to take about a 5 to 10 minute break when everyone comes back. We've been going at it for about an hour and a half. So we'll be in recess. We do have a few developments, and so we're going to go back and we're going to do one other consent order first. It's my understanding that from the preliminary hearings calendar, the Derek Jackson matter, which is case number 22-00442-C, y'all have reached a consent order in that case?
That's correct.
Okay. We just quickly, will you just tell us what the violations were and what the fine's going to be?
Yeah, Mr. Jackson was a candidate for lieutenant governor and failed to file 5 years of the look back of his income. That has since been amended. I went outside. He had a very detailed version of his financials, which I appreciated. We have reached a consent order of $625 civil penalty, and we were able to amend his filing, and is now correct.
All right. Any questions or comments concerning the consent order? All right. I'll go ahead and make a motion that we adopt the consent order as presented in Derek Jackson's case number 22-0042C.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. Do we have any comments? Hearing none, I'll call the question. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? That motion carries. Mr. Jackson, do you have anything else you want to add?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate you all. And as I shared with Attorney Cusack, you should make mandatory fields. That way the candidate can't even move forward without completing those mandatory fields.
Hey, that's you can't.
I'll speak to
That's it. Go ahead. All right. Now you just opened up a channel.
If you need legislation, I will propose.
So the reason why that's a good idea, maybe mandatory fields, you can't file it, but you can't make mandatory fields for the users because you may know your information, but sometimes when the user's using it, they have to keep going back and it literally takes days. And if you can't move to the next one while somebody's trying to find their information, it would just stop the entire process. But I like mandatory fields to file it, just not move to the next section.
Yeah.
So I think the staff can just do that.
Well, I do have some legislation ready for you. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much for coming.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
And Mr. Chairman, I just have a brief announcement on case 22-0043-C. That's Mr. Malik here. We were unable to reach an agreement in that, so I don't know if we need to reopen the preliminary hearing portion of that to find probable cause to push that forward.
We are going to go ahead and reopen that case. We're going to go back to the preliminary hearing calendar, then we're going to reopen case number 22-0043C in the matter of Rashid Malik. We have heard your presentation already with regard to the allegations and whatnot in that case. We have also heard Mr. Malik's response. Do we have any questions or additional comments from the commissioners at this time? Hearing none, I'll go ahead and make a motion based on the information presented that we find that Mr. Malik has violated the campaign finance, or there are reasonable grounds to believe that Mr. Malik has violated the Campaign Finance Act for reasons stated in the complaint against him. Do I have a second?
Second.
I got a motion and a second. Do we have any discussion? Hearing none, I'll go ahead and call the question. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? No. The motion carries. Mr. Malik, we appreciate you coming today. We appreciate the statements that you made. The matter will There's still an opportunity to potentially work this out if you choose to do so with the commission staff, but based on our finding today of these reasonable grounds, the matter will now be referred, excuse me, to the Office of State Administrative Hearings. Ms. Young down here will be pursuing that case against you at that level. Okay, so thank you very much for coming today. That does take care of all of our preliminary hearings. We're going to go back to the consent orders. Mr. Cusack, have we completed with all of your consent orders?
Yes, I think so.
All right, I'm going to go ahead and make an announcement because I want to check. I don't see anyone that's actually attending virtually at this point, and I don't see anyone that's here in the room with us. But I'm going to go ahead and ask, is there anyone present whose case is going to be called on the consent orders today? Because what we're going to do, since we have such a high number of remaining consent orders, we're going to go through these in mass. And I'm going to ask that I will call the case by number and name. And what I'm going to ask is for you to identify what the violation was and what the amount of the fine, the agreed upon fine was. And then we'll move to the next case, and then we're just going to vote on those as one, sort of an in-bank type vote. And I don't think that there's any, I don't know of any prohibition against handling it that way. If any of the commissioners think that I'm wrong in that, they can speak up and we'll address it a different way. All right, so let's go ahead. We're going to start with item C, case number 22-0058C in the matter of, is it Jaha Howard?
Jaha Howard.
Jaha Howard.
Mr. Howard was a candidate for state school superintendent in the 2022 election cycle. He was required to file the enhanced PFDS within 7 days of qualifying. He failed. After we prepared the complaint and sent it out to him, he did contact our office. It wasn't immediate, it was more recently, but he was in agreement, he was in violation. The way stated in the petition, he agreed to the set $1,125 fine. He also asked for a little bit of leeway to file the enhanced PFDS, so he's agreed to have that filed within 30 days.
Okay.
So this is not filed?
That's one that's not filed yet?
Correct.
And I go back to to stay consistent.
Yeah, you're right. That's going to be one then that we're not, jeez. Yeah, so on that case, all right, let's back out of this then. Go ahead.
So let me
ask a question.
Yeah, sir.
Are there a block of these in this list, the consent list, that have agreed, they corrected their errors, they made an error, they corrected it, and they agreed to the penalty?
Yes, all of mine but this are currently compliant with the
all
act.
right. And so, I'm sorry. So the whole purpose here is not necessarily to delineate the details of the case. Darrell Hicks didn't file his PFD. He agreed to the fines and then moved to the next one.
Yes, sir.
But we do want to know, I personally want to know what the amount of the fine was.
Yeah, absolutely, the amount of the fine. But I'm being a little bit short here, but that was I know, we've talked about it, we're catching you off guard. So we're just trying to get to the ones that are like consent items and get them done and vote on them in a block.
Yeah.
So make sense?
Yes, sir.
So what we're going to do with this one, and it's good that it was the first one. So for case number 22-0058C in the matter of Jaha Howard, I'm actually going to move to continue that case for this calendar. And if it's not resolved, it will appear next term on the preliminary hearing calendar. Do I have a second?
Second.
Got a motion and a second, any discussion? Hearing none, I'll call the question. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, so that's going to be moved. All right, so again, just to start to make sure the rest of these are normal ones where we have actual consent orders that are in place.
Yes, sir.
Okay, that's fine. And again, I know that we're catching you off guard because we're doing these a little bit different, but for the remainder of these then, as Commissioner Hicks was pointing out, what we would like is we just want to know what the violation is, like, they didn't file the PFDS or whatever it was, they've agreed to pay $500, it's been filed, and we'll move on to the next one, okay?
Yes, sir.
We're not trying to cut your time short up here, we're just trying to move it along, that's all.
I'm not mad at you.
Okay, all right, so we're going to go item D is case number 22-0049C in the matter of Jennifer Jordan.
Ms. Jordan, Attorney General candidate, 2022 election cycle.
She filed the enhanced PFDS but omitted years 2017, 18, 19, 20, and the first quarter of 2022. The income and income sources for those years. She agreed that she was in violation. The penalty is $625 civil penalty.
All right. Case number 22-0046C in the matter of Dorothea Dawkins Hagler.
Ms. Dawkins Hagler, candidate for Secretary of State 2022 election cycle. She filed her enhanced PFDS but omitted income for years 2017, 18, 19, 2020, and also the first quarter of 2022. She agreed that she was in violation. We agreed to a $325 civil penalty for this case. This is the only one that we deviated from the penalty schedule that we had. The reason we deviated, she contacted our office after she got the email explaining the change in the law and spoke with somebody on staff. Our staff members, they confirmed that she had an enhanced PFDS that was filed, and she mistook that to mean that she could disregard the email and she was set. But in fact, what she filed only had the 1 year of income. So because she at least responded to our office, we thought she was a fair candidate for some consideration. That's why we agreed to deviate to $325 civil penalty for Ms. Dawkins Hagler.
Case number 22-0052C in the matter of David Rodabaugh.
Mr. Radabaugh,
sorry.
Commissioner of Agriculture candidate in the 2022 election cycle. He filed an enhanced PFDS but omitted the income and sources of income for years 2017, 18, 19, 20, 21, and the first quarter of 2022. He agreed to pay the civil penalty of $625.
Case number 22-0053C in the matter of Ben Cowart.
Mr. Cowart, Insurance Commissioner candidate in the 2022 election cycle. He failed to file his enhanced PFDS within 7 days of qualifying. He agreed to pay an $1,125 penalty, $125 late fee, $1,000 civil penalty.
Case number 22-0054C in the matter of Raphael Baker.
Mr. Baker, Insurance Commissioner candidate in the 2022 election cycle. He filed his enhanced PFDS but omitted his income for years 2017, 18, 19, 20, 21, and the first quarter of 2022. He agreed to pay a civil penalty in the amount of $625.
Sorry. Case number 22-0018C in the matter of Ernie Anaya.
Mr. Anaya was a candidate for Georgia State Senate District 45 in the 2020 election cycle. He failed to file a PFDS within 15 days of qualifying. He agreed to pay a late fee in the amount of $125 and a civil penalty in the amount of $125 for a total of $250.
2022-0059C in the matter of James Morrow.
Mr. Morrow, State School Superintendent candidate in the 2022 election cycle. He filed his enhanced PFDS but omitted his income and sources of income for years 2017, 2018, 2019, 2020, and the first quarter of 2022. He agreed to pay the $625 civil penalty.
Case number 22-0061C in the matter of Kartik Bhatt.
Mr. Bhatt, Commissioner of Labor candidate in the 2022 election cycle. He had 3 violations. He was one of them that didn't file the enhanced PFDS within 7 days of qualifying. He also, he filed his DOI very late. He had started accepting campaign contributions for a period of 3 or 4 months and making campaign expenditures during that period, all before filing his DOI. In total, he had 13 separate campaign contributions he received prior to filing the DOI. He also expended money during 18 separate transactions, all prior to the DOI. To resolve his case, he agreed upon payment of a $5,000 civil penalty.
Case number 22-0062C in the matter of William Bodie.
Mr. Bodie, candidate for Commissioner of Labor in the 2022 election cycle. He failed to file the enhanced PFDS within 7 days of qualifying. He agreed on payment of $125 late fee, $1,000 civil penalty, total penalty of $1,125.
Case number 22-0065C, in the matter of Nadia Sorensen.
Ms. Sorensen, candidate for Commissioner of Labor 2022 election cycle. She filed the enhanced PFDS but omitted income for years 2017, 2018, 2019, and also the first quarter of 2022. She agreed on payment of $500 as a civil penalty.
Case number 22-0066C, in the matter of Andre Johnson.
Mr. Johnson is a candidate for Gwinnett County Superior Court Judge in the 2022 election cycle. He failed to file a PFDS within 15 days of qualifying. He agreed on payment of $125 late fee, $125 civil penalty, total penalty of $250.
Case number 22-0045C, in the matter of Jody Heiss.
Mr. Heiss was a candidate for Secretary of State in the 2022 election cycle. He failed to file his enhanced PFDS within 7 days of qualifying. He agreed upon payment of $1,000 as a civil penalty. This case too was one other exception. Anybody that didn't file the enhanced PFDS within 7 days, we had a penalty of $1,000 civil penalty, $125 late fee. When I spoke to Mr. Heiss, this was one of the first ones that we negotiated. I mistakenly did not tell him that there would be a $125 late fee. I just said $1,000 civil penalty. He agreed upon that. When I realized the error, I didn't want to go back on what we had agreed upon. So this is one other exception. But other than this candidate and what we've talked about for Ms. Dawkins-Hagler, everybody else in that statewide candidate who didn't file the enhanced PFDS, they've all been treated equally.
Got a question from Commissioner Watts.
You said this was the first one. Was this the first one that you negotiated? Was this before the decision was made to do the 1,125?
It was after, and I just misunderstood. I thought we were just doing the $1,000 civil penalty, and after I negotiated this, I learned it was my mistake.
Okay, that's fine.
Case number 22-0031C, in the matter of Charles Ford.
Mr. Ford's a candidate for Superior Court Judge in Cobb County in the 2022 election cycle. He originally filed a DOI and started raising campaign money for a state court judge position. And at the last minute in March of this year, he abandoned that campaign and he then qualified for Superior Court Judge. While he was actively involved in his state court campaign, he purchased 3 different things from his state court campaign, a website, a campaign video, and a digital billboard. Again, that was paid for out of the campaign for state court judge. When he qualified for Superior Court Judge, he edited those things and he then used them for his candidacy for Superior Court Judge. When he did that, there was probably a 3-week block where he hadn't filed the DOI for his Superior Court Judge campaign. So there's a violation for each of the 3 contributions he received from his state court campaign to his Superior Court campaign. He agreed upon payment of a civil penalty of $750.
Was that based on a commission investigation, or was it a third-party complaint?
This was commission investigation.
Okay. Case number 22-0022-C, in the matter of Jasmine Johnson.
Ms. Johnson was a candidate for the Georgia House of Representatives District 117 seat in the 2020 general election. Through redistricting, she's the current candidate for the Georgia House of Representatives District 120 seat in the 2022 election cycle. The violations that she had, she failed to file the calendar year 2019 PFDS. That was due within 15 days of qualifying. She also failed to file the calendar year 2021 PFDS. That was also due within 15 days of qualifying for those respective positions. She had a third violation. She failed to timely file her January 31st, 2022 CCDR. She agreed upon payment of $250 as a civil penalty and $250 as a late fee, total penalty of $500 to resolve this complaint.
Case number 22-0029C in the matter of William Blanchard Jr.
Mr. Blanchard Jr. is a candidate for State House of Representatives, the District 175 seat in the 2022 election cycle. He failed to file a PFDS within 15 days of qualifying as a candidate. He agreed on payment of $125 late fee, $125 civil penalty, total penalty of $250.
Case number 22-0027C in the matter of David Brinkman.
Mr. Brinkman is, he was a successful candidate in 2018 for the Savannah-Chatham County Board of Education. He had 3 violations that were addressed by this complaint. He failed to file his calendar year 2018 PFDS, his calendar year 2019 PFDS, and his 2020 PFDS. He agreed upon payment of late fees in the amount of $250 to resolve this complaint. I'll also add that he paid several other late fees through additional violations, CCDR violations. So we did deviate a little bit in terms of what the late fee was for this particular case, but the reason we did it is because he's informally also paid several late fees regarding other violations of the Act, but they weren't necessarily addressed in this complaint.
Go ahead, Commissioner Hicks.
If I understand you correctly, you decided to reduce his fees because he had already paid some other fees?
He had some a bunch of CCDR violations that we didn't bring a complaint on, but he was assessed several late fees for those. And this is probably something that should have all been brought together. We overlooked that. Our office didn't bring a complaint or anything like that. So when this case originated on a third-party complaint, when we got the complaint, we saw that he was already actively paying on several other violations. And so that's why we worked out this agreement that we have here.
So I'm sorry, I think this is a point that we should ask about. I mean, explain that a little bit again. So this was a third-party complaint?
Yes, sir.
And the third-party complaint was limited to what violation?
The PFDSs, alleged the 3 PFDSs, which was correct.
Right. And then during that investigation, you learned that he was already paying late fees, or tell us how that happened?
Yes, he's been involved with our office for probably the last couple years. And he's been paying late fees for a number of violations that he had. Now, it's informal, it's just late fees that he's paying. We never drafted a complaint or anything like that. But then we got this third-party complaint earlier this year, and that addressed the 3 PFDS violations. So when we looked, we also saw that those were violations.
Commissioner Thompson.
Were the previous late fees on the PFDS or just on CCDRs?
The previous late fees was just the CCDRs.
Can we reduce statutory, the late fees are statutory. So can we reduce something that's statutory?
Commissioner Hicks.
I'm going to recommend that we pull this one for further discussion and move on to the others.
Yeah, let's do that. All right, well, I don't think we need a motion for that necessarily. I think we're just going to pull case number 22-0027C out of the group that we're going to consider as one. We're going to move on to the next case, which is case number 22-0026C in the matter of Cody Smith.
Mr. Smith, candidate for Georgia State House District 180 seat in the 2022 election cycle. His violations, he had self-purchased a website, domain, and several campaign signs and business cards prior to filing a DOI. He agreed upon payment of a $425 civil penalty for the violations.
Case number 22-0010C in the matter of Denise Grabowski.
Ms. Grabowski, she's the current Savannah-Chatham County Board of Education member. She was the successful candidate in the 2022 general election. She has 2 violations, first being failure to file her June 30th, 2021 non-election year CCDR, and also failure to file her calendar year 2020 PFDS. She agreed upon payment of late fees in the amount of $250.
Case number 22-0060C in the matter of Alicia Searcy.
Ms. Searcy is a candidate for state school superintendent in the 2022 election cycle. She failed to file her enhanced PFDS within 7 days of qualifying. She agreed upon payment of a civil penalty of $1,000. She has also already paid a $125 late fee that was activated on our filing system. So the consent order only addresses the civil penalty, but she has also paid the $125 late fee.
Case number 22-0055C in the matter of Janice Laws Robinson.
Ms. Laws Robinson is a candidate for insurance commissioner in the 2022 election cycle. She filed an enhanced PFDS but omitted income from years 2017, 2018, 2019, 2020, 2021, and the first quarter of 2022. She agreed upon payment of a civil penalty of $625.
Case number 22-0048C in the matter of Michael Owens.
Mr. Owens, candidate for Secretary of State in the 2022 election cycle. He failed to file his enhanced PFDS within 7 days of qualifying. He agreed upon payment of $125 late fee, $1,000 civil penalty, total penalty of $1,125.
Case number 22-0085C in the matter of Jill Denise Trammell Cusick.
Ms. Cusick was a unsuccessful candidate for the General Assembly for the 2022 election cycle. She filed her CCDRs for January 31st and April 30th late, incorrectly entered some of her contributions and expenditures. Upon getting the complaint, promptly called our office, resolved everything. She agreed to pay a $250 fine for late filing and a $250 civil penalty.
Case number 22-0093C in the matter of Jason T. Hayes.
Mr. Hayes was a lieutenant gubernatorial candidate for the 2022 election. He improperly contributed money from his previous state senate campaign to his lieutenant governor's campaign, and upon getting the complaint, very upfront about it in the CCDRs too. Promptly admitted that it was something he hadn't done properly, and agreed to pay a $1,000 fine.
Case number 22-0076C in the matter of Vote Yes for Splost and Fred Straub III.
Mr. Straub independently purchased campaign signs for the Splost ballot question in the 2022 election for an amount over $500, triggering a registration requirement as a campaign committee or ballot question committee without filing as a ballot question. Once we informed him what he had done, he filed all of his appropriate paperwork and agreed to pay a $500 or a $125 late fee for filing after.
The next case that I had, and here's where the agenda's all changed, so y'all better check me on this, but I had BB as Ms. Sievert's case, is that right? I know, I just want to make sure that was the next one that we had. CC I've got as Lester Jackson's case, is that consistent? So it's case number 22-0064C in the matter of Lester Jackson.
Mr. Jackson, candidate for Commissioner of Labor in the 2022 election cycle. His violation, he failed to file the enhanced PFDS within 7 days of qualifying. He agreed upon payment of a $125 late fee, $1,000 civil penalty, total penalty of $1,125.
Got EE, we already did, as Christian Wyatt Smith. Is there one remaining?
That is Mr. Smith.
Okay.
Christian Y. Smith, that's case 22-0050-C. He's a candidate for Attorney General in the 2022 election cycle. He filed the enhanced PFDS but omitted his income and sources of income for years 2017, 2018, 2019, 2020, and the first quarter of 2022. He agreed upon payment of $625 as a civil penalty.
Have we now covered everyone's consent order cases? Just want to make sure. All right, with regard to those cases that we just heard as a block, with the exception of case number 22-0027C, I move that we adopt those consent orders as presented. Do I have a second?
Second.
Got a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, I'll call the question. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, all those consent orders are adopted. Now, let's go back to the David Brinkman case, which is case number 22-0027C, which again is a presented consent order that there was a little bit of discussion on. Is there any further discussion on that case at this time? Commissioner Hicks.
So I just want to be clear. Mr. Bremen had 3 violations related to his PDF.
Yes, sir.
And those violations come with a $125 fine,
The late fee.
the late fee.
Yes.
And staff agreed to reduce that because he discovered himself violations on his CDD?
No. Our office sent notice to him
Okay,
to pay late fees associated with several CCDRs.
okay,
Our office did not send any notifications about the PFDSs. We overlooked that. We didn't learn that mistake until we received the third-party complaint.
okay.
So we were essentially already working with this candidate, and it was partially an oversight on our part. So essentially, to resolve the third-party complaint, we agreed to waive one of the late fees.
But he violated 3.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
So
Commissioner Thompson, go ahead.
So is there a civil penalty on this case, or is it only late fees and we're waiving one of the late fees?
Only late fees and waiving one of the late
And you
fees.
believe statutorily the commission can waive late fees, even though they're set by law?
It's my understanding that we can, but I'm definitely not an expert on the case.
I don't know if anybody told you, I'm not a lawyer, that's what I was asking.
Well, I have a feeling we're getting ready to have some input on this. Go ahead, Executive Secretary.
So to Commissioner Hicks's question, his point, the penalty for the PFDS violations is $250.
Okay.
When he was notified of that, and Mr. Baywall, correct me if I'm reading this wrong, but it looks like we became aware he also had several late fees associated with CCDR reports. He's paid about $500 in fines on those CCDR reports, in addition to the $250 for the PFD violations. I think normally we would collapse everything into one complaint and one document resolving everything, but it looks like he paid those before we necessarily resolved the financial disclosure issue.
I'm sorry, can I?
Yes.
Had you collapsed them, what would the total fines have been?
I don't know that it would have been any different than it is now.
I mean, we just agreed to waive one of the late fees. You know, he was cooperative with me. He's also in Chatham County, which their Board of Elections has almost abandoned their campaign finance system. Unbeknownst to us, they've been uploading filings to our system without being directed to do so or being told to do so. Several cases that I have with Chatham County, there's a lot of confusion about how these candidates need to file. but Mr. Brinkman was between trying to upload things electronically, which was not working for him, and actually going in and meeting with somebody from the Board of Elections. He was doing a lot of work to try and get everything he needed filed. So that was the basis of just the fact that he has already been paying for some violations with our office, the fact that we overlooked some of the violations, and now there was another complaint that we were addressing. That was the basis of just agreeing with him to waive $125 in late fees.
So let the record reflect that I'm all in favor of being lenient with folks. I just want us to be consistent. That's the reason I'm bringing this up. So if it comes up again, I'm gonna march back in my mind to this one and go, well, wait a minute, what's the difference between this person and that person?
Mr. Brinkman has been cooperative with our office even before I got here. He's been paying on violations that he's had previously. He has been cooperative with our office then. He was cooperative with me. And like I said, there was a lot of confusion about how these candidates in Chatham County need to get their paperwork filed.
Understood.
To Commissioner Thompson's question, under 2156 14C1, we have the authority to waive late fees or civil penalties in certain circumstances.
You should have said that first time.
Well, I had to look up those. I'll have these memorized.
All right, I was actually waiting for that authority, so with that in mind, I'll go ahead and make the motion that we adopt the consent order in case number 20.
I was just going to second.
Oh, I'm sorry. That we adopt the consent order in case number 22-0027C, the matter of David Brinkman.
I'll second the motion.
Got a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, I'll call the question. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. That moves us on. Let's go ahead. I want to get a few other things knocked out.
Yeah.
I want to get these administrative, I'm going to move on to item 6 in the agenda. We're going to get these administrative dismissals knocked out, and as we all know, there is no action for us to take with regard to these. We're just going to listen as to why these matters were dismissed. And then before lunch, we're going to handle the joint dismissal so we can get y'all on your way as well, okay?
Thank you. We don't even have that on administrative. We haven't in the past. On administrative dismissal, we just ask if there's anybody, a commissioner that has an issue with any of them. And
I think when Commissioner Hicks joined, we stopped presenting all those.
Yeah, we did stop presenting.
Yeah, I was about to say that, but
It's really funny because the entire time that Jake Evans was chairperson, I always had to speak up and say, okay, we don't do anything on these, but we always heard the cases. So now I'm going to have to be reminded every time that we don't actually hear anything with regard to these. So
You just want to sit in that chair as long as you can.
yeah, right.
Is PC 2007 the last one from my reign as of terror?
God, I hope so.
I think so.
All right, so I guess the only thing that we'll do now with regard to these administrative dismissals is, are there any questions for Mr. Amati with regard to those dismissals, or is there anything that you want to address with regard to those dismissals?
No, sir.
Okay. Then we'll move on to the next part of the agenda, which is item number 7 on the agenda. It's titled a joint motion to dismiss. It's case number 20-0072C in the matter of Stacy Von Abrams. I believe that Mr. Cusack is going to be handling that, and we have other counsel that's here present. Would y'all go ahead and, is it just you? Just go ahead and state your name for the record as well.
Joyce Gist Lewis here on behalf of the respondent.
And welcome, and it's good to see you again.
Nice to see you as well.
All right, go ahead, Mr. Cusack, and then we'll let you add whatever you want to add.
Thank you.
And Commissioners, this is case 20-0072-C in the matter of Stacy Von Abrams. This case, as I think 3 of y'all were present, Commissioners, when this case was heard on April 1st of 2021, there was 2 grounds found to believe that a violation of the Campaign Finance Act had occurred. I'll address those two separately with the evidence Ms. Lewis provided us as to why we are entering in this joint motion to dismiss. But there was also 2 grounds in which the Commission found there were not grounds to believe the Campaign Finance Act had occurred. The 2 grounds to believe that the Campaign Finance Act had been violated were that the first one was that respondent had violated 21530G when she accepted campaign contributions prior to filing her DOI in the amount of $3,865.37 from Georgia Next and Friends of Stacey Abrams. In regards to that, I believe the commission told myself and Ms. Lewis to get together after the hearing any documentation that could be provided to alleviate any concerns or to not move this forward to get that. And Ms. Lewis provided that to me. That single count stemmed from campaign filings which showed that the in-kind contributions that I mentioned from Georgia Next and Friends of Stacey Abrams had occurred a day prior to the filing of a DOI. What Ms. Lewis was able to get to me was actual invoices from the campaign that showed those were actually a day later after the DOI had been filed, and then an affidavit from the campaign manager saying that these had all been contributed a day after, or the day of the DOI being filed. So we were able to get those documents. Also, Ms. Lewis amended the disclosure report to reflect those dates. So that's why now we are joining in this motion to dismiss on this count.
Do we have any questions for Mr. Cusack with regard to the issues relating to that count? Ms. Lewis, do you want to add anything with regard to that issue?
No, I think Mr. Cusack covered it. The only point I would clarify is that we had actually amended the CCDRs before the April 1st hearing occurred.
Yes, and I believe it was amended after the complaint was filed, so to properly show that. So it was after the complaint was filed before the hearing.
Okay. Anything further, Mr. Cusack?
Not from that count, I just have a second.
Right. Okay, go ahead.
It stemmed from a invoice that Sandra Reed had presented the campaign that we alleged had not been included properly on the CCDR. Ms. Lewis was able to get an affidavit from the partner who runs the billing there to say that this had been credited on December 22nd of 2017, that there had been an initial payment on that date for that invoice, and then also on June 8th of 2018 for the remaining balance of that invoice. So we were able to see the documentation paying of that invoice, and then the documentation in the form of the affidavit of how it was billed out and then properly disclosed from the partner who handles the billing from Sandra Reed. So that's why we come together. She's given me every single piece of evidence I've asked for, and we were able to trying to enter into this order to dismiss this case jointly.
Ms. Lewis?
I think he covered it.
Okay. Any questions or comments from the commission? Hearing none, I guess the way this is going to work, there's a motion before us. There wouldn't be a motion or second with regard to that at this point. It's just we have to address the actual motion that's presented to us, which is just, it's a little bit different in terms of procedure. We've had this before, I think, with regard to like a motion for attorney's fees. I remember that we pondered that for a while, but so I'm just going to go ahead and call the question whether we should adopt the joint motion to dismiss in case number 20-0072C, in the matter of Stacey Yvonne Abrams, as it has been presented to the commission. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, the joint motion to dismiss is granted. I want to thank both of you for working so diligently together to get the matter resolved. I mean, I think this is the perfect example of both sides working together, you supplying the information that the commission needs to show, that Ms. Abrams was in compliance. So again, I thank you guys very much for all the work that you've done.
Thank you very much for your time. Thank you, Mr. Cusack, and may we be excused.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you so much.
All right. Now we've got a decision. All right. It is again, I'm always flexible with everyone here. We can go to lunch and then come back, or we can push through and then eat lunch after. I will say that the next item on the agenda is an application for agency review under the statutes. Each side will have 20 minutes for arguments. So I mean, that's going to be pushing an hour. I'm hearing lunch all the way around. So we are going to go ahead and recess at this point. It is almost 12:30. What do y'all think? We'll be back here at 1:15. We'll be in recess. Thanks. 15, I believe we've got everyone here, so we're going to go ahead and I'm going to call the meeting back to order. We are now on item 8 of the agenda. We've got an application for agency review. I believe that everyone should have been given a copy of an initial decision that was rendered by the Office of State Administrative Hearings in the Georgia Government Transparency Campaign Finance Commission versus School Reform 2016. Our case number is 2016-0046 PC in the matter of school reform 2016. The docket number with OSA is 2028944. Looks like it was Judge Fry. We have a letter that I'm looking at here that was sent to OSA's chief clerk. It's dated April the 20th of 2022. It was sent by Mr. Frank Myers. It says, please accept this correspondence. The School Reform 2016's application for agency review with respect to the initial order filed in the above referenced case on March 23rd, 2022. I would appreciate you acknowledging receipt of this email. We haven't received, if I'm correct, Mr. Monty, tell me if I'm wrong, we have not received any any briefs or anything in that regard pertaining to the application for agency review. Is that right?
I don't believe so, but Ms. Young, if you want to step in because this is your case. But to my knowledge,
No.
Just the email version.
Okay. Under statutory authority, then, we will go ahead and proceed with oral argument with respect to this application for agency review. The statute provides for 20 minutes of argument for each side. School Reform 2016 is the party applying for agency review, so we would hear from Mr. Myers first. Then we will hear from the AG's office in response. The options are to essentially, we could vote to accept the initial decision by OSA. We could do nothing, which would effectively do the same thing, which would leave the decision intact. We could vote to essentially overturn the decision and schedule the case for a full hearing in front of this body, or we could go ahead and vote to accept the findings of fact and just change the conclusions to meet what conclusions we feel would be appropriate. I believe that I've outlined all the various alternatives that we could reach. Mr. Amani, I would ask you if you would to please keep time for the arguments of both sides. I'm going to go ahead and start that now. Mr. Myers, you can proceed.
Thank you, sir. Can we reserve time? Because I don't plan on taking 20 minutes.
You can reserve time for rebuttal, yes, sir.
Thank you. So I'm Frank Myers. I am a licensed lawyer in the state of Georgia. I don't presently practice. I do a little pro bono work here and there. But I've been, for the last 6 years, have been representing loosely myself and John Thomas and the respondent in this case, School Reform 2016. I'm going to start by asking for the same thing that I asked for the first time I ever walked in this room several years ago. Based on what the chair said, I'd like to have a dismissal, but I don't think that's possible under the law. But even if you accept the facts, as long as you change the conclusions, we will be happy and we will go away and you will never hear from us again. Because that seems like the only possible option that we have. I don't think we can just have the case dismissed based on what the chair said. I'm going to read a lot of my remarks because this has been a long case. 4 of you guys are new. Don't know anything about it. I'm not going to put you on the spot. I'm not going to ask you if you've read the 1950-page transcript or listened to the 4-hour hearing that we had in December that for some reason there was no court reporter for that hearing. This is the 5th time I've been involved in front of some official governing body based on the occurrences in 2016. 2,176 days. That's how long this case has lasted until today. When this case was brought, my daughter was a rising junior in high school. Today, she is a college graduate. When this case was brought, Barack Obama was president of the United States. When this case was brought, a little levity here, it had only been 36 years since the Georgia Bulldogs had won the National Football Championship. That was my lame attempt at humor. So a lot of things have happened over the last 6 years, except with this case. It's languished, and it's languished for a reason. It sat around unattended and unpursued, and there's a good reason for that, part of which I'll discuss in a few minutes. I know a lot of things have changed in this commission, including a new executive director and 4 new commission members. The staff lawyer who was responsible at the time for pursuing this case has moved on to greener pastures within our state government. Her boss, the former executive director, we all know what happened with him, and that's very unpleasant. I don't need to go over that again. And I know that, and I've read some of the bios of the members. You want to make this commission better. That's why you agreed to serve. And today is a chance to turn just an ugly page in the history of this commission. One of the assistant AGs who worked on this case has moved on, Mr. Fuller. Why has this case taken 6 years? And the answer to that question is because John Thomas nor I refused to admit to wrongdoing that did not occur. I take my being a lawyer very seriously. I take ethics very seriously. And every lawyer involved in this case along the way, including the lawyers in this room today, except for these 3 gentlemen who I think are new to me, those 2 lawyers, they know the truth. They know that there's been no violation under the law, and that's really important. I think there are at least 3 lawyers on the commission now, and that's important because this case turns on a legal issue that I want to make sure everybody understands. And the issue is real simple. All the rest of the stuff you're going to hear about is extemporaneous.
Mr. Myers, would you take that microphone and pull it toward there?
Sure. Is that better?
Yes, sir.
And the issue that we're here to decide, the only issue to be decided is whether under any circumstance, the law requires those like John Thomas and myself and School Reform 2016 to register with this commission as both a PAC and an independent committee. That's the issue. The law is clear. There is no such requirement under the law. And we are confident that a Superior Court, any Superior Court judge, will see things our way. So if there's nothing else, just set us free. Even if you rule against us, even if I'm not persuasive, get us so that we can have the next few months in front of a Superior Court judge who will solve and this question of law, because that's all it is. The truth is, it took, as I said, there's been 5 hearings that I've had to attend. If I was charging $250 an hour, which is probably about what I charge when I would do stuff like that, I wasn't a available lawyer. I probably got close to $300,000 worth of my time in this case, and I guarantee you the state has several $100,000 worth of their time in this case, and that's important because after the second hearing, it took 2 hearings for this commission to find probable cause. Of course, those are splashed all over the local media down in Columbus. Ethics charges, John Thomas and I got smeared because we had the audacity to try to change the status quo. That's all we were doing. But after probable cause was found, Mr. Ritter, the former executive director, said he wanted $6,000 and an admission of wrongdoing. And we didn't follow that. And of course, after a while, he was out of the picture. And then in the middle of COVID, Mr. Fuller, who's now, I think, at Georgia Tech, said he wanted $3,500 to settle this, and noticed a hearing in the middle of COVID, where John Thomas couldn't attend because his wife was battling cancer at the time. So that was the way they tried to pressure us into paying money that we, and we'll talk about in a second, that we did not owe. So you can add John Thomas's wife surviving cancer as something else significant that's happened over the last 6 years. And I'm sure there are things in your lives, children, grandchildren, graduations. 6 years this has hung over our head. It was bizarre. We had 2 hearings in this room, and first Ms. Wetzel handled the first hearing and couldn't get probable cause, and so then steps in Mr. Ritter with this advisory opinion that I think Ms. Young just handed out. I'm not sure what she handed out to everybody, but I think that might have been it. Do y'all have the advisory opinion? Does everybody have it? I mean, I'm not asking, I'm just saying, is everybody familiar? Okay. I thought that's what I saw, but she didn't give me the courtesy of handing me whatever she handed y'all. But both Ms. Wetzel and Mr. Ritter talked to this commission about, oh, this is just a formality. You're going to get a hearing. You'll get a hearing in front of a judge. You're going to have your day in court. And this lawyer, Ms. Young right here, is on the record in this case, and it's in that 1,950 pages, argued to Judge Fry that we should not get a hearing. She wanted to close this thing down and send it back to you guys without us even getting a hearing. We had to fight like hell just to get a hearing, which I think would be a constitutional right under the Constitution, but maybe I'm wrong. Again, you're the court reporter, right? I think that's right, okay. I think we met years ago, maybe. But the only hearing where we didn't have a court reporter was the one that mattered, and it was 4 hours. And there's an audio transcript, an audio tape of it, but it was just weird. When we were first notified there was something amiss, the first thing I did is I picked up the phone and I called Stefan Ritter. And I called him because of his reputation as an expert in the open records arena. And I have a lot of respect for him. Now, when somebody's doing something wrong, they generally don't call the sheriff. But that's exactly what I did because we hadn't done anything wrong. We have 2 options. Here's the legal question. Now we cut to the chase. We have 2 options under the law. If you want to engage in political speech activity like John Thomas and I did, you have 2 options. You can either have to be a PAC or you have to be an independent committee. It's not an either or proposition unless you follow Mr. Ritter and Mr. Lane's advisory opinion, which is not binding. That's the case in the nutshell. So I had told Mr. Ritter I wanted to assure him that we had lawfully operated as a political action committee. Understand, you only have 2 choices. Because we did not exceed the threshold of $25,000. That is undisputed. Ms. Young will admit to that. $25,000. If you get over $25,000, you've got to report. That's the transparency part. The other option is as an independent committee, which you do have to report, but if you're an independent committee, you can't work with the candidates, and there are 3 C's. Whether the candidate consented to your activities, you're helping them, the committee helping them, and there's a couple more. There was overwhelming evidence at this hearing by the 2 candidates that they were complaining about, who admitted that, yeah, we were absolutely deeply involved in their campaigns. Now, you can't have it both ways. It's an either-or situation. We lawfully represented ourselves as a PAC. We didn't pass the $25,000 threshold. We were under no duty to report, and we worked closely with the candidates, meaning we could not be considered independent. So that's it in a nutshell. There's another problem that's kind of ugly. And I can't read the room. I don't know how this is going to go. I just want this to go away. I want the same thing I wanted over 2,000 days ago. But maybe in rebuttal, I'll bring back bring up some things that are not quite as pleasant, but I don't want to get into that situation. I don't want us to be, even after all this time, you know, I can't escape that I am a lawyer. I can't escape that I'm representing John Thomas. And he hated he couldn't be here today. He's had an engagement with his work that just, it was not going to work. The advisory opinion is of no value to this case. It is of no legal weight or authority. That's the bottom line to this. That is how they talked this commission that was different, you know, different members for the most part, into finding probable cause. That's what caused us to spend all this time and money. I mean, hundreds of thousands of dollars, and they're down to, I don't remember what the judge put in his order, $1,000 or something. Oh, and by the way, listen to this. It's a defunct political organization. There is no deep pocket. For some reason, Christopher Fuller took me and John Thomas off the pleadings and changed it to School Reform 2016. It's not even an entity anymore. It has no assets. Also, it's undisputed in the record of this case, one of the things the judge ordered us to do was to recreate our activities and file as an independent committee, knowing full well that it's undisputed in the record. We don't even know where the records are anymore. I don't live in Columbus anymore. I haven't seen these records. I mean, that's what you get when a case languishes 2,000 days. You know, it's just time for this case to go away. It really is moot. Neither John Thomas nor I have been on the school board in Columbus since the end of 2018. And I will say this. If this case goes away, neither John Thomas nor I want to take any action against any person for any potential wrongdoing that had been done. And a lot of wrongdoing was done. I'm leaving that part out, hoping we're going to be able to, you know, be done with this. But I'll be happy to go into that if anybody wants to know. But y'all now all have the facts. The law is clear. It's well past time to shut this case down, and I hope that's what you will do. And I thank you for your attention.
Michelle? We've got about 6 minutes left.
Thank you.
Is that right?
Yeah. Okay. Can I hold that?
You can.
Okay. Thank you.
First of all, let me make sure everybody can hear me. Okay. I think that we are fortunately in agreement that there's not a factual dispute here in terms of any of Judge Fry's findings. The key facts that y'all need to be aware of is that this was a committee organized by 2 people, and it engaged in a variety of campaign-related activities regarding the school board race. They were supporting 2 candidates that were challenging 2 of the incumbents. The incumbents were Pat and Kathy. Mr. Thomas and Mr. Myers were on the school board. They did not get along well with Pat and Kathy, who were also on the board with them. Those candidates were up for re-election, so Mr. Thomas and Mr. Myers wanted to support their challengers. They did that in 2 ways. One was by affirmatively supporting the candidates that were running against Pat and Kathy. Their names were Joanne Thomas Brown and Sheila Williams. Then they engaged in a second negative line of campaigning. They called it the No More Pat and Kathy campaign. They ran attack ads, you know, called No More Pat and Kathy ads 1 and 2 on local TV stations. With regard to the positive activities, the candidates who testified at the hearing agreed that they coordinated with and had knowledge and consent of those activities. The only problem with those expenses is that they exceeded the campaign contribution limits applicable to those candidates during that time. With regard to the negative campaigns, however, the situation was different. Even Mr. Myers and Mr. Thomas both agreed and testified that they did not work with these candidates at all in that campaign. In fact, they specifically advised the candidates that they needed to stay away. They needed to be 100 miles away from these ads because they were going to be ugly. It's pretty close to a correct quote. I don't have the transcript right in front of me that's pretty close. So what Judge Fry found, based on that, is that this was a committee that operated in both ways, both as a PAC, which would not have been required to register, but would have been required to stick to campaign limits. And with regard to the No More Pat and Kathy, negative ad campaigns that everyone's agreed that the candidates were not involved in. They knew about it, but they, don't interrupt me please, they knew about it, but they did not, the testimony is clear and it's reflected in the initial decision. They had no knowledge of what was going on, when it was going to happen, no input into the content of these ads, and they were specifically told, stay away from this, don't touch it. Judge Fry specifically found that that did not amount to knowing consent for the purposes of finding coordination between the candidates and the committee. For that reason, Judge Fry found that as to those activities, school reform was required to register as an independent committee and file campaign disclosure reports. When we talk about how this has gone on for 6 years, there are several reasons for that. First of all, it's because these gentlemen have refused for 6 years to register and file forms the way that the law requires them to. Secondly, it's because they have raised objections at every hearing and asked for continuances and delays at every step of the process. We do wish that things had been more expedient, but that's what happens when you have continued delays, continued objections, rather than a group complying with the law and seeking to make things right, the way that we saw so many candidates trying to do this morning. With regard to the advisory opinion, which was entered independently of this case, it was requested by Ms. Carrie Richardson, I believe. And it is not Mr. Lane's opinion, nor was it Mr. Ritter's opinion. It was this commission's opinion, adopted after notice, review, and opportunity to comment and vote. And it is the position that this commission has taken that when you have a political committee that operates in both functions as an independent committee and as a political action committee, you have to comply with the requirements that apply to each of those activities. That's consistent with the state laws and regulations. It's consistent with the way federal laws are applied to hybrid PACs as well. There's no controversy as to that. This commission has taken this position since 2015, as reflected in the advisory opinion, and Judge Fry said that simply the matter of plain statutory construction supports that argument, as does the advisory opinion. There's no error in the conclusions of law in that respect made by Judge Fry, and really no fact or specific conclusion of law other than the notion that this PAC had to comply with both requirements has been challenged. The only potential error that could be addressed would be the lateness of the fines.
Would be the what?
The lateness of the fines. But with that being said, our recommendation would be to simply adopt the findings of fact and conclusions of law as written by Judge Fry. And unless the commission has questions, I'll reserve time in case there's any questions down the road.
Mr. Myers, you have 6 minutes.
Thank you, sir. Several misleading statements were just made, some outright lies. I'm sorry. I know I'm not supposed to say that as a lawyer. I need to be more respectful, but I pay her salary too. She talked about 2 candidates. We supported 4 candidates. She conveniently forgets about that. She apparently doesn't understand in a campaign that you set up, whether, let's just say it's Abrams versus Kemp, you're going to have some positive ads and you're going to have some negative ads. They've taken the position that anything we did negative is somehow a separate campaign that they can just segregate from the main campaign. It doesn't work like that. I don't know, it's just being naive, not being experienced, not having run a campaign, but that's just not the way it works. And then if you take this leap that we were somehow running a separate campaign, they have tried to pick and choose certain expenditures to say, oh, well, that makes you an independent committee, because, and the way they do it is really weird. And it's contrary to the evidence in the case. I know y'all haven't listened to that 4-hour hearing from December, but the 3 words, I was struggling a minute ago, I looked it up. Assuming you take the leap and go, okay, it's a separate campaign, what they would have to prove to make this case is that none of the candidates, neither of these 2 candidates, and there were 2 candidates that were subject to the negative ads, that neither of the 2 cooperated, consented, or were consulted on these negative ads. And the evidence at that hearing in December was exactly opposite of what she is trying to tell you. They said they were aware, they knew it was going to be bad. This was political advice. I'm a better political guy than I am a school board member. I can promise you that. But it was my advice to them as their political guy to say, this is going to be hot. You need to stay away from this. And after this case is over, I'd love for y'all to see these ads, because they were hot. They're the best ads I ever produced. But they consented, and they admitted they were consulted, and they cooperated. All you have to do is show one of those 3 things, and their theory of the case fails, even if you make the leap to this secondary campaign, which is nutty. I know that's not a good legal word. There just weren't 2 separate campaigns, and that's what she's trying to say, and that's what her whole argument rests on, and it's just ridiculous. She actually used the words, they had no knowledge of the ads. I hope and by the way, the last thing I want to do is a delay. After 2,000 plus days, the idea that we have been causing delay, the delay was caused because we weren't being extorted by Mr. Ritter and Ms. Wetzel. We refused to say we did something wrong that we didn't do wrong. That was the delay, and that's 6 years. I don't know if God's going to give me 6 more, but if He does, and it takes 6 more, I'm going to still be fighting this thing. But I hope you put it to rest today. You know, I hope you can see the big picture, the moodness of this whole situation, the downside to Ms. Wetzel's career. She's got problems, folks. I recorded a lot of information, phone calls with her. Georgia's a one-party state. She's got problems. Everything can go away today. That's what we want to have happen. I'm not in the business of trying to police crooked lawyers. And I know you had one, and you had to get rid of him, and he was executive director, and he's the reason I'm sitting here now, is because he stood at that podium and lied in December of 2017, and I'm sitting here today still having to live with that. And a Superior Court judge is going to look at these legal issues, and they're going to say, this is nuts. And I'm just asking you to short circuit that, be done with it, and finally set us free. Thank you. And I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Now that the arguments are concluded, it's our time as commissioners, as you will recall, to have a period of public deliberation. Do we have any comments or questions among the commissioners? Mr. Thompson.
So just for clarification, why were the individual names removed in and I know it wasn't your case at the time. Do we know why?
Honestly, so that happened at a pre-hearing conference before I came into the case, and there's not a transcript of that. I'm not sure exactly how that discussion came about. But I believe you were not on that call? Okay. I'd have to get in touch with Mr. Fuller and ask him.
And I guess my comment on that would be that, and I'm not trying to be sort of ticky about it, but that's not actually, I guess, a question that would be before us on this application, for agency review, because that's not really a question. I'm not trying to be ticky with you, Commissioner, you know that, but it's not a question that's actually within the order.
Gotcha.
It would be a question potentially that would have to be addressed down the road in terms of, I guess, trying to enforce the order, perhaps. But again, not trying to cut you off of that. I again, appreciate any type of public deliberation, and if there are any other questions or anything, or comments by the commissioners. The only thing, oh, yeah, sure, which?
This is for,
Sorry. Go ahead.
Mr. Thomas.
Myers.
Myers, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
I'm the new member, I'm
Yeah, I understand.
You are right, I have not heard the transcript. I don't have it. I have read the order twice. And as the chair indicated, if we wanted to do the deep dive into what happened, we would have to have a full-blown hearing where we would have access to those materials. My question is, what exactly are you asking us to do today? Is there some changes to this order you would find palatable, or do we need to do that deep dive to get to the truth as you view it?
Thank you, sir. To get to the truth, you would have to do a deep dive, but at this point, you know, I think from the chair's comments, you know, I would be happy to, if I need to submit changes to, I just don't want this to go on any longer, Mr. Bard. I mean, I've just had it. And if you don't have the power to just dismiss this, if you're inclined to do that anyway, and I'm understanding from the chairman's comments, you don't have that power. I mean, the best alternative here is just to accept the facts and change the conclusions. And this is what John and I want. We want our names cleared. You know, even though we're not the named defendants, and by the way, that was Mr. Fuller that did that on his own motion when he got involved in the case. I don't know why he did that, but that's to answer your question, Mr. Thompson.
And I want to make clear to you, I don't want to interrupt you, but I want you to understand that what I said for one of the options today would be to overturn the order.
Okay,
which is what you're talking about.
That's what
wait.
I'm sorry.
If we overturn the order, then the matter's not over at that point. Then the matter comes back before us to have a full-blown evidentiary hearing before this body, and then for this body to make a determination of whether you have violated the Campaign Finance Act and then what the penalty, if any, should be.
Obviously, we don't want that. So I think based on the four options we were given, and Mr. Chairman, if I screw this up, I'm asking you to correct me. You said you can accept the facts and just change the conclusions. And the conclusion, all John and I want is our name back. This is 6 years. And conclusion being, we don't owe any money, the PAC doesn't owe any money, and we can go about our life. I mean, because if you did all this other stuff, it would take, apparently under these rules, I mean, it's hundreds of, it's tens of thousands more dollars. And I mean, I have, you know, when this first started, I called Stefan Ritter. I told him, I said, y'all need to go across the street and lobby the legislature and get you some new rules. This is horrible. I mean, this is just horrible. And I know y'all deal with this stuff, and I don't have to tell you that there's some problems with the law, this being a glaring one. But I don't know that there's a great solution. It's just, but Mr. Bard, just whatever you can do to set us free and clear our names, that's what we're asking to have done. That's it. And I don't understand this law. I practice in superior courts and once in a while in federal court, and I've just never seen anything like this. I don't understand this process. I just don't.
Are there any other questions or comments from the commission in terms of deliberations? The one additional comment that I would make, just to make sure that we're clear on this, is the preliminary hearing in this case. And I know you mentioned that there was one of us that was here at that time, and that was me. It was back in December of 2017, and I just didn't want to make it sound like, because again, and I may have heard this wrong, I'm not sure, but you know, this advisory opinion that came out, it wasn't something that came out right at that time. This advisory opinion, you know, came out in June of 2015, so you know, it was about 2.5 years old before, you know, your case was heard for a preliminary hearing.
Can I just clarify? Just real quick. I'm saying it came out to us. as people who are being accused of breaking the ethics rules. That's what I meant. I didn't mean, it's obviously dated 2015, I believe, isn't that right?
Yes, sir.
So I wasn't trying to say, but I did need to correct you on one thing. The first hearing in this case was September of 17. That's, Bethany ran that hearing and didn't get probable cause, and then Ritter came in and put her on the bench, sent her out in the hall, and then that's when I'm pretty sure they whipped out the advisory opinion. And, you know, here's the point. They can't legislate.
I'll tell you what the point is. The point is I'm making, I was clarifying for everyone here.
Sure.
That the advisory opinion that we were talking about in this case was not something that was just decided in the moments before probable cause was found in your case. It was on the books for 2.5 years. Probable cause was found in December of 2017. Now, I have read the administrative law judge's opinion. I don't see anything in there, and I haven't heard anything today where I see anything that you pointed out and you say, hey, this particular fact, I dispute this. This is wrong for this particular reason. I haven't seen you point out anything within the initial decision in terms of a factual conclusion.
May I address that?
No, you're not going to interrupt me.
Okay.
I haven't seen anything in a legal conclusion that you pointed to that you said, hey, this is wrong. And with that being said, after giving you your 20 minutes of your time and the ability to argue the case, I'm going to make a motion that we deny your application for agency review and that we adopt the initial decision as written by the administrative law judge. Do I have a second?
Because at least
I got a motion and a second. Do we have any further discussion on that? Hearing none, I'll call the question. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, the motion carries. Thank you, Mr. Myers, for your time.
Thank you for interrupting me.
I'm going to move on the agenda to the report of the executive director. Yes, sir, you can be excused. Thank you. Mr. Amati.
Bethany's going to love the recordings. We'll see in Superior Court.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Vice Chairman Watts will be happy. This will be one of my quicker executive reports.
Indeed.
Second. A brief update on the budget for the new fiscal year we've just entered. Y'all are aware, or Mr. I think 3 of you were here, I believe. A year ago, we received effectively a $700,000 increase in our agency budget through negotiations with the legislature, which we're very appreciative of. Moving into this next fiscal year, we've effectively had a flat budget. The budget for FY 2022 was a little over $2.9 million. It's about $60,000 lower this year. That reflects a reduction of $300,000, which was a one-time insert in the 2022 FY budget for technology services with the new e-filing system. However, between pay raises to staff, increases in ERS, leaves, ability to convert sick into paid leave, and some other things that the governor's office did, we saw about a $240,000 increase. So it's about a wash. We're in good fiscal position moving forward and look forward to good negotiations with the legislature in January when we move into the amended budget as well as the big budget for FY 2024. Obviously, we're aware of different economic trends that are happening right now. I don't believe we anticipate any changes in the amended budget, but we are going to continue to have those conversations and prepare just in case that may occur. I believe you've met a couple of our new staff attorneys, Mr. Pruitt and Mr. Baywall. Mr. Baywall has been with us since March, Mr. Pruitt for about a month or two. We're very excited to have them on. I think they're going to do good work for the commission. Lastly, and I think I addressed this at our last commission meeting, but in the waning moments of sine die this past session, a bill was passed that moved ethics oversight of development authorities under the purview of this commission. And so the way that works is for counties with development authorities, if there are allegations that development authority members have violated some code of ethics, whether it be regarding per diems or conflicts of interest, what have you, in the past, someone could allege a complaint and seek redress, and that would be heard by an appointee of the governor's office. The legislature, in their infinite wisdom, saw fit to transfer that jurisdiction to this commission. Ultimately, you're going to see a rule promulgated by staff over the next couple months that dictates how this commission will codify how these cases are heard, effectively who you will appoint as a hearing officer. In the interim, we do not have any complaints under this new rule yet, but there has been already issues out of the Fulton County Development Authority that have been in the paper that if we do not get a rule promulgated before a complaint's filed there, potentially we will have to reach out and ask for some sort of emergency order in the interim. But that's something to have on your mind and be thinking about, and we have some ideas for how we can efficiently handle those cases in the future that we'll be presenting by rule. Mr. Chairman, that's all I have today.
I got a question.
He's going to extend.
Yeah. Well,
I've seen it all now.
You've piqued my interest now that you brought this new rule in. So y'all will create a rule, and then do we have to adopt it?
I think the best practice would be a procedural rule that this commission adopts.
And then, I know you haven't drafted it, but like, what's the initial thinking? Like, is it the same standard that we've been dealing with here? Or
It's in a lot of ways a completely different animal. It's already codified by statute what various violations are and what options the governing authority has if they find those violations have occurred. We would not actually be involved in litigation of this. This commission's designee, which I'll be candid, I'm going to recommend it be me, would simply sit as the arbiter of the hearing between the two sides, the complainant and the development authority member. But in terms of standard of proof, what various violations would trigger this statute, all of that's already codified. The only real change is they've created an alternate jurisdiction to hear these issues with this commission.
So when you say hearing officer, you're representing whom?
The commission in determining whether an ethics violation or a conflict of interest occurred by the development authority on that board.
And if it has, how's that going to work?
There are a few different options, and there's some discretion that lies with the hearing officer, whether it's a public reprimand or if it is severe enough, there are statutory frameworks in place that deal with impeachment from that development authority. And again, none of this is new law. This has always been the case. It's just a matter of the legislature has moved it from the governor's designee to either the governor's designee or the Campaign Finance Commission. And that's really a venue shopping question that I think the complaint would get to make.
Who is the governor's designee?
I don't know.
All right.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
All right. Do we have a report from the Attorney General's office?
Just a quick one.
Which number are you?
Number 12.
There.
I'll be as brief as I can. On the administrative front with OSA, we've sent a number of cases over to them that are in the pipeline. We'll be having some hearings in August and September on those, so we may have more to report back later, but we've not had any OSA hearings since our last meeting of substance to report on. In litigation, the main matters that are pending right now are we continue to be in court still with the David Perdue and Stacey Abrams cases that challenge the application of the leadership committee provision. Since the last hearing, in both of those cases are fairly similar, although they're procedurally a little different. They're both still pending in the 11th Circuit and District Court. In each of those cases, Judge Cohen in the District Court had found that there was an unfair disparity between the way that the incumbent, Governor Kemp, was allowed to set up a leadership committee and raise unlimited funds while Perdue is the primary challenger and Ms. Abrams is the unopposed Democratic primary candidate were not also allowed to do so. So he restrained Governor Kemp's leadership committee, Jordan's first, from using his committee until the primaries. The commission was named as a defendant. Originally, the relief sought was to bar the commission from enforcing the statute. Judge Cohen declined to do that. Instead, he chose to simply restrain the leadership committee. Now the primaries are over. Mr. Perdue is no longer a candidate, so that is resolved. Ms. Abrams is now the official Democratic Party nominee, so she is now on a level playing field with Governor Kemp. They can both use leadership committees and raise unlimited funds. So we have filed motions to dismiss all of the 11 circuit appeals and district court proceedings on the grounds of mootness. We have not gotten a ruling from any of the courts in any of those cases yet, but we expect one from the 11th Circuit quite soon, and then the district court probably soon thereafter.
Okay. Thank you very much, Ms. Young. Thanks for all the hard work you've been doing.
No problem.
Last thing is public comment. I don't see anyone here for public comment, but I think we are required to announce and make sure that no one has any public comments. I see no one here, and I don't think there's anyone attending virtually for public comment. Therefore, I will move for adjournment. Do I have a second?
Second.
Got a second? I assume there's no discussion. I'll call the question. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? No. Meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everyone.